land on
Yeah.
Singer Island?
Yes, the issue is submerged lands on Singer Island, and the Army Corps is, the guy's name at the Army Corps is Kempek. The head of the Army Corps is Colonel Andrew Kelly, but the guy who does the regulation stuff is Pempek, Pempek,
Okay.
and he's the one I think I'm meeting with. And the reason is this: they are, I believe, the Army Corps is imposing $100,000 fine on Lozman. Let me put my video on so I can actually talk to you. Pardon my, so because I hate to look at myself, my picture. So the Army, here's my.
Hello. Ms. Botel, we are starting the meeting now. We're going to call this meeting to order May the 5th, 2021, the first meeting of the City Council for the month of May. We will have a roll call by the City Clerk.
Mayor Ronnie Felder.
Here.
Chairperson Shirley Lanier.
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Kashamba Miller Anderson.
Present.
Yeah, I'm on.
Present.
Bye-bye.
Councilperson Trodrick McCoy.
Here.
Councilperson Douglas Lawson.
Here.
Councilperson Julia Botel.
Here.
City Manager Jonathan Evans.
Present.
City Clerk Claudine Anthony is present. City Attorney Don Nguyen. Here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We will have the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence by Councilman Trodrick McCoy. Justice for all. The first part of our agenda is the additions, deletions, or substitution. Mr. Evans? Or
Madam Chair, we have a couple of modifications to the agenda, and I will ask that the clerk read those items into the record.
Madam Chair, members of the board, you have a copy of the addition, deletion, revision sheet in front of you. We will be adding item number 1A, a community benefit from the Office of Councilperson Lanier to buy Why Because I'm Worth It in the amount of $1,000. Item number 1B, from the Office of Councilperson Shirley Lanier to the Youth Recreation Association in the amount of $1,500. Item number 1C, from the Office of Shirley Lanier, Watch Kids, Inc., in the amount of $2,000. Item number 1D, from the Office of Councilperson Shirley Lanier, Heart, Health, and Healing Ministries, in the amount of $500. Staff is requesting that item number 8 be deleted. Item number 12, there was a revision in the body of the resolution. The revision was to section 2, number 9, where they put in the wording subject to employment and privacy laws. So number 9 will read, whereas the applicant, Tractor Supply Company, and their agent, Hicks Schudacker Company, have expressed a commitment to hire locally as possible for both construction jobs and subcontracting jobs for the construction phase, as well as long-term employment. For the operation, they shall advertise opportunities by participating in local job fairs and advertising opportunities within the city of Riviera Beach. The developer shall provide a report to the Development Services Department at 6 months post certificate of occupancy documenting the outreach efforts to acquire local employees, number of local employees hired, subject to employment and privacy laws, and the percentage of construction costs expended with local vendors is stricken, subcontractors is inserted, broken down by city. As well as staff is requesting that item number 13 be moved and heard after item number 4 under awards and presentations.
Any objections to these additions, deletions, or substitutions by the board?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
so Ms. Anthony, the Tractor Supply Company, do we have an electronic copy or a paper copy of the changes?
Madam Chair, members of the board, the addition deletion sheet was, with the revised resolution, was emailed to you all around 4:50 or so. It was originally sent at 2:55, but some individuals said that they did not receive the attachments, so it was resent around 4:50. So it should be in your email. But if not, I have a copy here. I can ask staff to make a copy for you.
I think I see it here. I have it, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Motel, Councilman Motel, your mic is not muted, so we just.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, sorry. You can hear me moaning.
Yes. Are there any questions in regards to our additions, deletions, or substitutions? Councilman McCoy?
I would like to hear number 8. So that's my objection, because I would like to discuss it.
You want to put it on under discussion?
Well, I want to hear why we can't have it as a discussion item as opposed to taking action.
Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair, members of the board, staff would like additional time to provide a more comprehensive review of that item, to look at other municipalities and what their administrative services fee is regarding solid waste services. So we just like a little bit more time to work on that and bring that back to the board for a more robust conversation.
Follow up.
Yes, go ahead.
So specifically, my question revolves around what happens to the solicitation that's out on the street that's referenced in the backup of the memo.
The discussion would be centered solely around the administrative services fee. It would not discuss anything with regards to the solicitation that's currently on the streets for solid waste services.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Are there, according to our agenda, there are 15 items. Are there any disclosures by council in regards to any of these items? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Councilperson Votel,
Yes.
Councilperson Lawson,
Yes.
Pro Tem Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Chair Lanier,
Yes.
unanimous vote.
Comments from the public on consent agenda. All matters listed under this item are considered to be routine, and action will be taken by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a councilperson so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Number 1, there's,
Madam Chair,
yes, go ahead.
we do not have any public comments on the consent agenda. The acceptance of public comments on the consent agenda is now closed.
Move to approve. Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Votel,
Yes.
Councilperson Lawson,
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Pro Tem Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Chair Lanier,
Yes.
motion approved.
Next item, awards and presentations. Madam Clerk?
Item number 2, presentation from Riviera Beach Cares Homeless Coalition for Families, Inc. by Terry Ferguson.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is a District 1 item, and I want to have the opportunity to introduce Riviera Beach Cares and the Executive Director.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Members, this item that we're going to be presented is a presentation from the Riviera Beach Cares from the Executive Director, Ms. Terry Ferguson, and Councilwoman Billy Brooks regarding a very innovative program that we have here in the city of Riviera Beach. And I imagine at some point you may have heard about it, and we did discuss this last year. So I want to bring this before the body so that we can, help jumpstart some of the programs that this Riviera Beach Cares nonprofit organization is doing here in the city and looking to expand. So, Madam Chair, Ms. Terry Ferguson and Councilwoman Billy Brooks.
Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Councilman McCoy, and to Chair Lanier and other council persons. We're really pleased to be here this evening and to share this overview of the program with you. I have with me my chair of the board, Ms. Councilperson Billy Brooks, and we're really pleased again to be here. Riviera Beach Cares Homeless Coalition, our goals are to connect, to support, and empower. Next slide. Oh. Okay, big green button. Okay, our vision is to create a unified, informed system of care to engage our community and support families who experience a temporary loss of residence. So this vision came about as I've been employed here in Riviera Beach for 12 years, working with Bridges at Riviera Beach. And during that time, we encountered many families who experienced homelessness. And as you know, the system has really changed since 2010, whereas now there is one point of entry for families, and what happens is they get bottlenecked. So as a result of that and having no place for families to go, this vision was created. Now I want to ask you all a question. What would you do if a homeless family approached you? What would you tell them? And it is rhetorical, just think about it. So when I was with Bridges at Riviera Beach, we would get countless calls from councilmen, from the community members, from police, from fire, from clergymen, from businesses here in the city, all with that same question. We have homeless families, and we don't know where to send them to get support. So that is how this vision was born. Our mission is to provide food and temporary shelter for homeless families with children with at least one child under the age of 18. We want to do this within 12 to 24 hours, of their homeless crisis. The reason that we want to do this is because there are no emergency shelters in Palm Beach County. I want to repeat that. There are no emergency crisis shelters in Palm Beach County. So our goal is not to duplicate what is already out there. Our goal is to fill the gap for families. We had families who have slept in storage units, pregnant mom with 5 kids, and her husband, who was finding jobs, could not get into the system that is currently in place, and for 3 months during the summer had to sleep in a hot storage bin. Any women out there who have ever been pregnant, that's not any fun at all. We have searched from Miami-Dade all the way up to Fort Pierce to try and support these families, and there's no room in the inn. I want to introduce our board. As you see, Councilperson Billy Brooks is our chair. I'm Terry Ferguson, CEO and founder. I have Ms. Deborah Wilson. Would you please stand? She's also here in the audience. Battalion Chief Val Davis, he is board of director. Ms. Nona McKinney, she is also a director. And she is a very important piece, just as all of us are, of this puzzle, because Ms. Nona McKinney has been homeless. Nothing about me without me. We need her input to understand the system and to understand what it is homeless families go through. We have Miss Alexis Larkhart, who is newly elected board of director, and also Miss Ann McLaughlin. Our goal, again, is to service families with at least one child under the age of 18 who are residents of Riviera Beach. How do we help them? We provide the shelter. We connect families to community-based services. When I did the research, went to the county, spoke with Director James Green, and he showed me the entire plan for the county. What he showed me is that the county is focused on affordable housing, which they should be, because we need affordable housing. That's at the back end. What happens to the families and the children in the meantime, when they are sleeping in their cars, when they are sleeping in the park, when they are sleeping at Walmart in the car and in parking lots? So that is, again, why we developed this effort. We want to seek out longer-term solutions, and then, of course, assist in creating a personalized roadmap to sustainable housing. I am a social worker of 30 years doing therapy and case management, so I know the landscape very well and how to get folks connected. So that is the work that we will be doing. In addition to that, we want to provide free homeless prevention education workshops. We've worked with families who have spent their savings to put down for a down payment on a lease-to-own situation, paid their monthly rent on time, thinking that they were paying towards owning this property, and the landlord goes into foreclosure and they're out on the street. We want to be able to provide information to the residents of Riviera Beach about how to avoid these situations and how to protect themselves against these situations. These are some of the referrals that we've received since since the 2019 to 2021. And I want to indicate that we have not formally rolled this program out and promoted it. Word of mouth has gotten around and folks are calling in. If you don't know, the moratorium which President Biden had extended to the end of June 2021 was overturned. And that means that people can be evicted now. I do know that the federal government is trying to get a stay and then also trying to see if they can get that reversed. But in the meantime, families are already being put out. So if there's people who are in need of assistance, if you are concerned that you'll be evicted, you would need to contact the legal aid department and they can help you work through that situation. So 92% of the families referred for services have been connected in some way, whether it is that they have been sheltered, whether they have been connected to other resources. We even had one woman who had a child in the first grade who had not been in school since the beginning of the school year. Just informing her of her rights with McKinney-Vento and helping her to understand that her child cannot be denied an education because she didn't have an address. So connecting with her, with the school district, and working with that department, we were able to get this young lady enrolled in Lincoln Elementary. So this is a client that we also helped. And she gave permission for her picture to be shared, but she was homeless, ran into a situation with the housing authority and really not understanding the situation. So we worked with her. She is now housed. This is another young lady that we're helping to get her Social Security information together and again, try to get her housed. This can be a long-term process. This is why we need your support. This is how we can be contacted. We're also on Facebook, and I try to regularly update Facebook with announcements and information that can be helpful to families.
Well, I certainly want to thank Councilman McCoy, who had a heart for this program. he and I had a situation where he called me one night, I guess it was about 9 o'clock, wanting to know if I could help with a homeless family. And we did work it out. And so when I was asked to come aboard and be the chair, I shared with Terry that I know that we have one person on the city council who will certainly have a heart for this, and we really thank you so much. He's given also out of his community benefit funds, and we just thank him so much for what he's doing. There will be an opportunity for you all to get more information. We're going to be having May 20th. You can tell them about that. But I just wanted to thank Councilman McCoy for what he's done.
Yes, we'll be having a virtual meet and greet session on May 20th from 7 to 8 p.m. And if you are interested in receiving an invite for that, you can contact us through email or through the phone number. The email again is info@help4homelessfamilies.org, and or you can call 561-223-1855. Thank you.
And I do want to add that none of us is being paid for what we're doing. And sometimes it is long hours and a lot of work involved in doing it. So we do need financial support. So just think about that. If you got extra money, you don't want to pay Uncle Sam, just think about giving your money to this nonprofit. We really would appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening.
And I want to thank the other council members who have also contributed. Mayor Felder, thank you so much.
Madam Chair, don't go nowhere, Ms. Ferguson.
Go ahead.
So I wanted, Ms. Ferguson, if you could see if the members had any questions, and I wanted to add a couple items.
Yes. Any questions?
How do you guys work
Madam Chair.
in relation to was it the homeless drop-in center or?
That's the Lewis Center?
Lewis Center, right.
Right. So we are in connection with them in terms of, you know, communicating, being active so that we can stay on top of changes as they may occur, you know, and funding opportunities for families. But we are not directly funded by the county because the Lewis Center is under the county. And again, that's one of the reasons where, you know, where the bottleneck comes in at, because so many of the programs and resources that are in Palm Beach County are funded or receive funding through the Lewis Center.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
just a quick comment. I think Terry might remember I was there about 2 years ago at St. James Church when Reverend Drayton and a group of people rolled out, well, didn't roll out, but were just initially talking about this program. And I was so very impressed with the model because it really addresses the need, the immediate need that families have when they become homeless. And no other program does this. So I encourage my colleagues to support it. I know many of you also already have, but and I also encourage the public, if, as Billy Brooks said, if you've got some money you want to donate to a 501c3, this is certainly a good one to choose. Thanks, Terry, and thanks, Billy, for the good work.
Thanks, Chair Botel, and thanks for your support.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So I want to just say a couple things. So Councilwoman Brooks, this is not a Project McCoy work. This is the work of the body, and certainly I know, and I asked you guys last year that I want to make sure that every member has some face time with understanding what this program does, and I think that's probably why we don't have many questions, but certainly this isn't something specific to me. I think this is can be attributed to the body and also to our city manager, so I don't want to accept credit on that part. Also, and much of this work is what, you know, I stand on your shoulders for you being a former council person in this district, so thank you for that, Councilwoman Brooks. But I want to also see if, you know, speaking of addressing that immediate need, that my office connects you with our police department's victim service advocate, so that, because I know there are some things that sometimes happen, and we need to make sure that they know that this resource is available in our community, so that way, you know, if you have a situation that occurs outside of the normal operating hours where there's somebody on call at PD who knows that this resource is available in the community, can make sure that we can, you know, route those folks or those families to get the support services that may be available. And certainly this is not just more or less a subsidy, but, you know, there is also a transition plan in helping these families become sustainable. And to that end, I want to make sure that get you to recommit regarding following up and letting us know some of these success stories that you're doing in the community, so that way, we can know that this is working and how we can better, support this program. So, I would ask that, you keep us informed in that regard regarding the progress and, the work that you're doing in this community.
Absolutely. And just to your point in terms of making sure that people know how to refer, we developed a if this, then that, very brief triage program that we want to train the entire community on, so that anyone who comes in contact with a homeless family or a homeless person would know how to refer. We want to be able to make that available in print as well as through website, so people can even access it on their phone and know who to call and who to contact in order to support families.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Mayor.
Ms. Ferguson, do you have any housing?
We don't have housing. Right now, we've been using hotels, and then we also are really seriously looking into something called shared housing. And shared housing would be for people who may have a room that they want to rent, and going through a process of background checks and matching and supporting the family that is in need of shelter as well as the family that is providing shelter. And we'd like to be able to raise enough funds to be able to give those families a stipend. So one of the things that we want to be able to do is a citywide survey, electronically again, to get information and data about what you know about homeless families within your community, as well as who would be willing to participate in a program like that, so that we, have our marching orders.
Last question. The number you have, is that a 24/7 number that you posted on the screen? Oh, there it is. That 24/7?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Item number 3, presentation and proclamation for International Internal Audit Awareness Month. There are no public comment cards on this item. The acceptance of public comment cards on this item is now closed. This is from the Office of the Mayor.
Okay. Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This proclamation from the Office of the Mayor, City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, declaring the month of May as International Internal Audit Awareness Month. Whereas internal auditing is a vital part of strengthening organizations and protecting stakeholders of both the public and private sectors, and whereas internal auditing helps identify and manage the organization's risks and ensure policies, procedures, and controls are in place and working appropriately. And whereas internal auditing is an increasingly sophisticated and complex activity requiring specialized knowledge, training, and education. And whereas internal auditing is an established profession led by the Institute of Internal Auditors with a globally recognized code of ethics and international standards for the professional practice of internal auditing. And whereas the contribution of internal auditors to the success of organizations and the global economy at large deserves our recognition and commendations. And now, therefore, be finally resolved that I, Ronnie L. Felder, Mayor of the City of Riviera Beach and Palm Beach County, by the power vested in me by the residents of Riviera Beach, do hereby proclaim the month of May as International Internal Audit Awareness Month in Riviera Beach, and implore all citizens to join me in recognizing professional internal auditors for our contribution. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the City of Riviera Beach to be fixed on the 5th day of May, 2021 AD.
Thank you. Are there any comments from Ms. Elena?
Good evening, Mayor, Madam Chair, members of the Council. I want to thank you for recognizing our profession and shining a light on us. It is not one of the most well-known professions out there, and this proclamation and opportunities like that give us a chance to come in front of you and the public and explain the role that internal audit plays in any organization. And overall, it is in very simple terms. We are here to support management and the board in achieving organizational objectives. So again, thank you very much for recognizing the internal audit profession.
Thank you, Ms. Selena. I have had the pleasure of working with Ms. Selena very closely in the city's audit committee, and although all of our departments in the city are very important, I think that the internal audit department is very important in the sense that it helps us to govern ourselves. It helps us to get to the point where we're not having conversations with the Inspector General's office, that we know how to rectify our own missteps that we find ourselves in. So I really appreciate the fact that you have worked very hard in your office, and we look forward to more information and more, especially when it comes to internal auditing. And it sounds like it sounds very boring, but it isn't. It really isn't. It basically tells the department, it tells an area that this is where you're lacking, and this is what we have to do to be able to get up to par. So thank you so much for your hard work.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Item number 4, presentation of federal updates by Maurice Curlin, Esquire of Alcalde and Fay. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have any public comments on this item. The acceptance of public comments on this item is now closed.
Madam Chair and members of the board, this evening we have a presentation from our federal lobbyist, Mr. Maurice Kirkland. We've had the opportunity to have multiple discussions and conversations with his firm as it relates to federal legislation. The firm was founded back in 1973, has extensive expertise and experience in representing Florida entities. It is a bipartisan firm that partners with multiple agencies on Capitol Hill to help facilitate local governments navigate the complicated hallways of Washington. We've had them service this community for well over 20 years, and so we've had a great partnership. And so this evening's presentation is to provide an update with regards to legislative action that is on the table and some things that we can anticipate happening in Washington in the next couple of months. So with that, Mr. Kirkland.
Thank you, City Manager Evans, Mayor Felder, council members. I very much welcome the opportunity again. My name is Maurice Curland. Many of you I have met over the years. Those that I have not had the opportunity, I look forward to it. I appreciate that introduction. I will just say that we are very proud and we're honored to advocate for Riviera Beach all these years. I started with the firm, Alcalde and Fay, in 2001 and began working on behalf of the city approximately 2003. And I can't believe it, all these years that we have been working and advocating for you in Washington. So I appreciate this opportunity, and you know, one of the things that we I have to say that is something that we take particular pride in is our long-time relationships with our clients, and specifically with Riviera Beach. We're in the relationship business. That's a lot of what lobbying is all about. There's the substance, but it's also connecting with the members of Congress, your House members, the Senate members, the committee staff, the legislative staff, both in Washington and the district, and of course, interacting directly with your city manager, your deputy city manager, your department heads, and each of you. So with that in mind, I do want to go ahead and because I know you all have questions, and I do want to get to what's happening in Washington, which is quite a bit. And so I do have a PowerPoint presentation, and my discussion is going to focus on, the new Congress, a new administration, and multiple pieces of legislation that are moving. Things are happening in Washington, and so this is an opportune time to visit with you all. So to turn to the next slide, which is just the items that I'm going to go over today. Our discussion would be our federal advocacy, the various types of actions that the government can take. We have worked with the city and on whether it's assisting the city in securing grant funding, or dealing with a permitting issue, talking to a federal agency, or of course going to your members of Congress. And I would be remiss in not commenting that, of course, we were extremely saddened by the loss of Congressman Hastings, who has been the champion for Riviera Beach as your member of Congress. And so we are right at the outset. I do want to say that, we worked very closely with that office and very closely with his staff. It is a terrible situation because as of yesterday, the governor finally announced when the next election will be to fill that seat. And as you all probably have read, that will not be until November the 2nd. So at the moment, at least on the House side, you're without a member. The office is still operational to respond to constituent questions, but as far as anything legislatively, they are restricted in what they can do, and the House clerk runs that office. And I can answer any questions about that later in my presentation, but I did want to comment on that because I know that's a major issue, since the congressman is the first person we turn to with his representation of the 20th district and specifically Riviera Beach. Turning to the next slide, our federal advocacy and where things stand. New administration. Anytime there's a new administration, you've got their goal to move legislation while they've got what they call political capital. So the Biden-Harris administration, their first priority, of course, was COVID relief. And that was both on the vaccination side and, of course, on the economic hit that you all have been weathering and other communities across the country. And then, of course, a new Congress. And with the House maintaining a Democratic majority, but then a slim majority over in the Senate with the two senators that were elected in Georgia that gave the Democrats a 51 to 50 majority, with Vice President Harris casting deciding votes. So with that, as you know, the big piece of legislation that I'm going to talk about later in this presentation was the American Rescue Plan. But let me turn to the next slide, which would be federal resources. So the universe of federal resources, and Mr. Evans spoke about it, and items that we advocate for the city on, federal appropriations. Those are annual funding of the federal government and every department and agency and programs, including grants that the city can apply for. Authorizations, which are multi-year pieces of legislation. And many of you have probably heard about the transportation bill, or what has been called the FAST Act, in prior years, Safety Lou. These are multi-year bills because, as you all know, to invest in transportation infrastructure, it takes usually multiple years. So Congress is aware of that. And they, every so often, usually 3 to 5, sometimes 6 years, they're moving an authorization bill. Then there's grants, and we're continuously advising the city about grant opportunities with our grant alerts. And then, dealing with an agency or a federal department to get some assistance when it impacts you, whether it's a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, you need a permit, or Department of Housing and Urban Development dealing with your housing stock. I was listening to the discussion just before I got on, and where you're trying to deal with your homeless population. And so we're looking at grant opportunities for the city. And when you're dealing with the Department of Housing and Urban Development or any other agency, we're there to kind of connect you immediately and not have to try to navigate on your own through, multiple layers of the federal government. That is our role. And so with that, I just want to comment because on the slide, it does talk about 3 projects that I had worked closely with the city staff, specifically your deputy city manager, and I know she was working with your other staff to put forth 3 priority projects and to submit them through Mr. Hastings' office because he would have been the lead on these. One for water resources, 2 for an emergency operations center, and 3rd, dealing with your wells complex multi-use. And so those were 3 projects that you all put forth because this year, after a 10-year lapse, there was an opportunity to actually put forth projects. I'll get into the complications of that because of the absence of Congressman Hastings and also the fact that your 2 United States senators, Senator Rubio and Senator Scott, have elected, at least up to this point, not to move forward with any projects at all from any community. So with that, the next slide, please. So going to this next slide, and I'll touch on this briefly. Again, I mentioned this, a new administration, and we're closely monitoring this because in addition to the president, vice president, who's going to be in place to be making the decisions and who are we going to be turning to? So within this first 100 days, pretty much the Biden administration has filled the top positions. I've listed some of those folks, the various secretaries of Treasury, HUD, the EPA administrator, the secretary of VA, and I only mention that because I know there's an issue that we're working on for the city regarding one of your fire stations and its interaction with a VA health center there. In addition to that, the 117th Congress, that's what we're in. Speaker Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, and Mr. Clyburn, the leadership on the House side, and of course over in the Senate, Senator Schumer now taking control as the majority leader over there with Mr. McConnell as the ranking member. Our go-to people, of course, would be your United States senators. But in this case, like I said, one of the things I'll comment on, and with our firm, we pride ourselves on the fact that because of our client base, we can try to go to other members outside of the Florida delegation because they might sit on a particular committee that maybe Senator Scott or Senator Rubio does not sit on. And in this case, that's very important because without Mr. Hastings and with the 2 United States senators from Florida at the moment not electing to pursue projects, we're having to kind of see who else we can go and talk to. The next slide, please. So the next slide, please. So getting to the major legislative items in this first, 4 months of this year, COVID-19 relief. That's the big one. $1.9 trillion bill passed and signed into law by President Biden on March the 11th. And in this slide, I also reference, the appropriations process that I talked about and this community project funding and also infrastructure. You all have probably been reading, whether in Palm Beach Post or wherever you read online, that the administration is now looking to turn to major infrastructure investments with a very broad definition, not just roads and bridges, but a whole variety of things that you could say are important infrastructure for the community. Next slide. Just okay. So getting to the American Rescue Plan, as I said, 1.9 trillion, big numbers. And that's great. You all say, okay, well, what does that mean for us? And that is something for the last year that we have been pushing and advocating because the critical piece was, okay, there's all these needs, but are we going to have to go to the county like we did last year with the CARES Act to try to see if we can get some funding for our needs in Riviera Beach? And the good news is that over the last year, pounding away with some of the national organizations, some of the state organizations, the mayor's organizations, the League of Cities, which I know some of you have been very involved with, and our efforts, and along with former member of Congress, Mr. Hastings, the idea was, hey, wait a second. Every community has been impacted by COVID. Every community is dealing with different issues. And it's just not, adequate to just say communities or counties over 500,000 in population should be getting direct access. And so the good news that I can tell you is that the bill included $350 billion for state and local aid. Of that, it was broken down for every state, territory, District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, every county, and every city. And approximately $65.1 billion was directed for cities. And doing some rough calculations, the Congressional Research Service and other groups have estimated that your city, Riviera Beach, is looking at an allocation sometime next week, on May 11th is kind of the target date. A total of $14.9 million will be allocated to the city. And the way that the bill allocates things, 50% would be coming to the city this year. And then the remainder next year. So that's the good news. And if we go to the next slide, I'm going to detail a little bit more about the American Rescue Plan, also known as ARPA. As many of you all are very well aware, and with the various needs of your community members and your citizens, constituents, the bill contained a whole variety of other pieces of aid. The most well-known, of course, were the $1,400 in direct stimulus payments to those that were needing it and met the income threshold. Extended unemployment, which I know is very important in Florida with the low unemployment. $160 billion for vaccinations for your business community. Additional money and time for the PPP program, and also for your arts and culture and other venues that have been impacted that just really couldn't operate very well in a virtual environment. What they call the shuttered venues operations grant, and that's through the SBA. And there's a number of other major aspects of that bill that are on that slide, and we can always come back to that. So next slide. Again, and I kind of referenced this earlier in my remarks, state and local funds, aid coming down to every community, every city, and in your case, again, 14.9 million. The real question will be, what can you use those dollars for? And if we turn to the next slide, and I know that's a lot of writing there, but I'm just going to read kind of one of the key aspects. These funds that are coming from the Department of Treasury, you can use them to address the negative economic impacts, including assistance to households, small businesses, nonprofits, or for aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, hospitality. Obviously, you guys being Riviera Beach, your marina, the port there. I mean, those are areas that touch on important items for you all. Of course, you've had to have your workforce working overtime, doing many different things that they've done in other years. Those dollars can be used for that. And in addition to that, the bill also talks about specifically having funds being available for infrastructure and broadband. Beyond that, there wasn't a lot of detail in the bill. And so the Treasury Department under Secretary Yellen, next week, we're anticipating just about the same time that they actually distribute these dollars down to the city, they're going to give some guidelines. And there'll be many questions about, hey, can we use the dollars for this? What can we do? That is what they have been working on for the last 5 or 6 weeks, trying to figure out, okay, what are the proper uses for these dollars? So that way, and I know you had some discussion from you were recognizing your internal auditors. So that way, when you all decide how you're going to utilize these dollars, that they're used in a proper way, and there is reporting requirements. These dollars will be scrutinized, and so therefore, whether it's your internal auditors or the IG for the Department of Treasury comes in, you guys have checked every box, you're using the dollars as they should be used, and you're able to make some serious impact in the community, whether it's for your various infrastructure, your roads, your water plant. I know that's something that I will have to comment on. This is something I've talked at great length with both your city manager and your deputy city manager and other staff, because we know that's a major priority, and hopefully there will not be any question that you can use some of these dollars for that, especially because the bill itself said these dollars can be used for water infrastructure. Next slide. Again, this is kind of what I just was talking about. There are certain requirements. Basically, as you've probably read, there will be people that will attack these dollars and say, well, it's, some of this is being misspent, it's not being wisely used. They're trying to combat that in every possible way, the Department of Treasury. So, you all will follow the guidelines, but there will be periodic reporting, and there will be a certification process where you and your auditors will have to just say, hey, we use these dollars for this. This is why, this is, we check that we can use it for this, and that's what we're doing. Next slide. So I just wanted to comment again on federal appropriations. Some of you may recall, or from the fact that Tallahassee just concluded their session that, you're often in a position to go to your state legislators and to ask for funding for specific projects that are important to the city. That's a process that's been going on in Tallahassee. And it used to be a process that was regularly available in Washington, D.C. They called it earmarks or congressionally directed spending. After a 10-year lapse where they weren't doing it, with Democratic control of the House and Senate, the chairwoman of the Appropriations Committee, Rosa DeLauro out of Connecticut, and also Patrick Leahy, the senator out of Vermont, said, hey, we need to be doing this. We need to return to this process where an individual member who knows his cities, or she knows her cities, knows her district, can say, hey, taxpayers are paying federal income tax, and some of that money should be coming back to my congressional district. And so this process has been reintroduced this year in a kind of what I would say baby steps. Each member could only submit a total of 10 projects. And I know you all have many projects, many more than 10. And so each member could only actually consider and submit 10 projects. So we worked with the city and the staff, and that's where we came up with those 3 projects that I mentioned earlier. They were submitted to Congressman Hastings' office. We've also made the senators aware of these. And as I said, right now we're in the complication of, without Congressman Hastings and no new member of Congress until the special election, seeing who else could possibly help with this. If perhaps the Appropriations Committee directly, perhaps the Transportation Infrastructure Committee directly. It's a challenging situation, and it's something that we've talked about at length with your city management. But the important thing is that you all have these projects kind of prepared and, for consideration. And of course, we're going to find every available opportunity, whether it's competitive grants, formula grants, or the American Rescue Plan dollars. Let me turn to the next slide. The other opportunity is, as I mentioned earlier in my remarks, every several years they need to pass a new surface transportation bill, a bill that deals with roads, bridges, highways, transit, buses, you name it. And like I said, it's a multi-year process. Again, this is another opportunity that came up this year where they have to renew the FAST Act and to basically make sure that there's significant investments in transportation infrastructure for the country. This is something that will be taken up in later this month. And last year's bill was a 5-year, $494 billion plan. It got through the House. It did not make it through the Senate, so we're on a 1-year extension. We will see how it proceeds this year, and that's going to be folded into a bigger infrastructure bill, which on the slide, as you can see, and as you've been probably reading in the news, since they passed the American Rescue Plan, the next thing that the administration wants to turn to is what they're calling the American Jobs Plan and the American Family Plan. And I list on the slide there, the proposal by the administration is $2.25 trillion over 8 years. It would encompass all the road, bridge, transit, all the things you normally think of as transportation infrastructure into this bigger package that also will include funding for what the administration considers also important other types of infrastructure, whether it's water infrastructure, broadband, so people can do more of these types of video learning or work, and in addition to that, addressing other issues that have popped up because of the COVID emergency, such as all the issues with childcare or remote learning. So that is being teed up right now. The administration's been on the road kind of promoting that. The Republican senator, who is the ranking member of the Environment and Public Works, Shelley Moore Capito out of West Virginia, and has taken a different approach, saying that, look, that this proposal goes way beyond what is normal transportation priorities. We want to focus on, on the roads, bridges, highways, and there will be that debate later this, between the House and the Senate, Democrats and the Republicans. But right now, this is what the administration is proposing. Next slide. We come back to Washington. I will just kind of make probably a bad joke. We are there. Everyone's getting along in Washington. There are things happening there, but most importantly, we have been positioning the city with its top priorities in water infrastructure, relaying them to your congressional delegation, and at the same time scouring the universe of federal funding opportunities, whether it's grant funding or a competitive grant funding or formula grant funding, or getting the city ready for this, what I call injection of $14.9 million that will be coming to you next week. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sorry I've kind of gone on for a bit, but there were a bunch of different items I did want to go over. I thought it was important, and I thank you so much for your attention, and please let me field any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to thank Mr. Curlin for being a staunch advocate for the city. I've been up there in Washington to visit several of the representatives, and Mr. Curlin has always been very helpful in setting up those meetings for us when we weren't able to possibly get them with the other members of Congress who may not be in our area. Also, he is constantly providing us with information as to what's going on up there, and I'd just like to say thank you to him for all that he has done for the city of Riviera Beach as representing us as our lobbyist up there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Councilman Lawson.
Madam Chair. Mr. Curlin, I just want to echo those sentiments. Thank you for the efforts and energy that you've done and given to the city for the number of years. Every time we went up to Washington, you rolled out the red carpet and made sure that we had all the opportunities to speak to our legislation. So I just had a few quick questions, sir. The first is the $14.9 million that's coming down the pipeline. You said 2021 we're going to receive the $7 million. When will the remaining $7 million be allocated to the city? Over what time frame?
So the time frame is next year. The other 50% will come to the city, and you will have basically a 3-year window to expend those funds. I think the idea was, there's always exceptions, but the idea was, this is significant money that's coming down from the Treasury, and they wanted to make sure that communities could absorb it, utilize it, and then not just have, I guess, what you would call just all of the money coming down immediately, and at the same time not have it sit out there for years and not be spent, because of course they want, the Congress, the administration wants these dollars to be injected into the community, into important needs, and have them get underway. And I'll just draw a little stark a little contrast. Those of you that will remember going back to 2008 and that financial crisis, and then 2009, when we had, you know, what was called the American Recovery Act, and that was in 2009, and there was this discussion about shovel-ready projects. And that created certain problems because certainly there were projects that were shovel-ready, but there were other projects that were not shovel-ready, but were important and needed. And, you know, and so one of the big examples was back then, well, a lot of road projects were just repaving. And that was important, but, you know, it didn't go to some longer term needs because they weren't exactly shovel ready. There isn't such a definition in these funds. And so the good part is, you know, it'll be, the dollars will be available for kind of a wider variety of types of projects that certainly are in different stages of readiness, but at the same time, they will want you to expend it over a 3-year period. So short answer, 7.45 million, if I'm doing the math right, will be coming to you. Like I said, sometime next week, unless the government gets a little delayed, and then the next 50% will be next year.
Perfect. And then for the water and broadband were some of the points that this expenditure could be, these funds could be spent for. Mr. Evans, when can we start discussing the plan for these funds that are coming down next week and then also next year? Because I think that we need to really focus some of, or majority of these funds that are allocated towards that water and infrastructure that we need to address, and also broadband in our community. I know that we have some funding that's possibly coming from the county, but being that these funds will be here within the next week or so, I want us as a council to start having that discussion to allocate these funds as well.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
With regards to the monies that we anticipate receiving from the federal government, that will be part of your budget discussions that will start in the month of June. But staff has already tentatively started putting together a plan that those monies would be set aside for investments in the new utility district operations. So we are looking to spend a bulk of that money, unless directed otherwise by the board, on the new utility district plan. But that will be part of the budget discussions that will ensue here in the next month or so.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love for the council to sit down and discuss the allocation of those funds and part of that June discussion. So that'd be perfect, Mr. Evans. Water is going to be the #1 priority, because I also saw that within the American Jobs Plan that's coming down the pipeline, we have about $56 billion coming towards upgrades and modernizing wastewater, stormwater, and drinking water. So I know we have a lot of money that's coming down the pipeline, but I want to make sure that we're first in line. And Mr. Curlin, it's very refreshing to hear that earmarks are going to be an option for legislation again. So I'm trying to schedule some trips to come back up there. I'm sure my colleagues will be back up there before the end of this year and early next year after our new congressman is elected, to really kind of get in the ear and start harassing some of the legislation to assist with this water infrastructure that we have and some of the remaining infrastructure we have in the community. So thank you, Mr. Curlin, again for your work and efforts and everything that you've done for the city of Riviera Beach.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from the board? Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kirkland, for your presentation, and we look forward to getting more money from Washington. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. And if you have any other questions or follow-up, please let me know.
Yes, we will do that, sir. Madam Clerk?
Madam Chair, members of the board, the next item to be heard is item number 13, discussion on Clean and Lean Community Improvement Program. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have any public comments on this item. The acceptance of public comment cards on this item is now closed.
So are we taking items out of order? What are we doing?
Under addition, deletions, and substitutions, I announce that staff requested that item number 13 be heard after item number 4.
No, not after number 4. Go ahead, Mr. Sermons.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'll start by saying what we already know, that Riviera Beach is a beautiful city. However, there are certain parts of our city that need to be cleaned up. And the purpose of this discussion and deliberation item is to talk about 3 ordinances that staff has been preparing that would effectively give the city more tools to clean up certain neighborhoods of our community and reduce instances of nuisance properties. The 3 ordinances accomplish 3 things. The first is to give a sort of manual to property owners to communicate the minimum standards of property maintenance in this community, especially as it relates to rental properties and those absentee landlords. That property maintenance manual would also be a vital tool to our code compliance officer to have specific guidelines that they could cite properties who are not in compliance. The second ordinance is a repeal and replace ordinance for the code compliance chapter of the city code. It would streamline the code process and put us on par with best practices of the region and other municipalities. And it would also create a funding source for properties who actually need the help, that don't have the means to upkeep their property and bring them into compliance. The third ordinance would give us a new process to address chronic nuisance properties that drain the resources of our police department and are stubbornly non-compliant with our property maintenance regulations. It's important to note before we get into this conversation that none of these 3 items are brand new. The city of Riviera Beach maintained a property maintenance code for much of its history until the state switched over to the Florida Building Code, at which time our property maintenance code lapsed, and we have not had one active since 2004. Okay. The second one for the code compliance process, we have been working with council since at least 2017 to revamp the code compliance process and put it on par with best practices. And the third one, the chronic nuisance ordinance, we have been in talks with the police department and outside legal for at least 2 years about developing an ordinance that would create a process for chronic nuisance properties. To present these items for this discussion item, I will introduce Ms. Christy Godot, who is our outside legal, who has worked closely on the latter 2 of those ordinances in crafting the regulations. She also has been working with the city of Riviera Beach for over 15 years, so she is intimately knowledgeable about our code compliance process. And she also crafted that ordinance as well as the one related to chronic nuisances. The property maintenance code was crafted by the city's building official, and it is based on the International Property Maintenance Code. And without further ado, Ms. Godot.
Thank you, Mr. Sermons. Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, and distinguished council members. I am Christy Gatto, and I'm going to talk with you tonight about the clean and lean nuisance abatement ordinances that Mr. Sermons just gave an overview for. This discussion tonight really is the overview. We don't plan to get too far into the weeds, but we want to make sure you're all on the same page in terms of what you currently have in your tool belt to deal with nuisance properties and what we're proposing to add to that tool belt to assist and create a coordinated effort through multiple departments to have different options of how to deal with these properties. I want to say at the outset, the goal of all of these processes is voluntary compliance. We work with, and certainly in code compliance, Ms. Bostic does a great job, and Major Lewis and the police department do a great job of reaching out to these property owners that are in code violation, have nuisance issues, to talk with them to try to get them to come into compliance voluntarily, to be good neighbors and to be good citizens. But as you know, sometimes those types of efforts fall on deaf ears. There may be hardships involved, and we have to engage in these different processes to help those property owners along, to be the good neighbors, to invest in the city, and to make the city of Riviera Beach the best city it can be, not only from an appearance standpoint, but from a sustainability standpoint. And so that's what the goal is of all of these. We're not seeking to go out there and hammer people and be the enforcement mechanism. We want to help people come into compliance. So if I can go forward to get everybody on the same page, and let me just say, if you have any questions during this overview, please stop me and say, Christy, I have a question or a comment, so that it can be more of a discussion, because I just don't want to talk and have confusion or any questions that I don't answer. So please feel free to stop me. If we start at sort of a background overview of what you currently have, this first slide on the screen tells you the four basic processes you have in place. The first one, obviously, is your code enforcement. You have your ordinance, which is a traditional code enforcement process. It is effective and it has worked for the city, but as noted on the slide, you have limited remedies once you find a property owner in violation, and even once you get a lien. So that process kind of comes to a screeching halt in terms of bringing a property owner into compliance. The second group we're talking about is the Nuisance Abatement Ordinance. This is done with the police department, and I work closely with Major Lewis. We've been dealing with a couple convenience stores as of late, and what this process does is it addresses, primarily it's used for controlled substance violations at properties where there's repeat offenses. The police department has to be intimately involved with that property because of the nuisance caused by the controlled substance violations at the property. That, much like your code enforcement process, does have its limitations if the property owner will not bring the property into compliance voluntarily. The next area that we use in our tool belt to address nuisance issues is your Unsafe Building Abatement Ordinance. That is through your building official, and that is a process where he certifies that a property is unsafe. And that process goes through to try to get the property owner again to come into voluntary compliance, but if not, there's a mechanism for the city eventually to get involved and demolish the unsafe structure. As it states on the slide, there is also a limitation, as this process doesn't address other issues that may be existing at the property. Finally, the last current tool that you have is what I term your Nuisance Services, and this is primarily done through your code enforcement, your code compliance department, and that is where they can do administrative tows of derelict automobiles on private property. They can also do board and secure services for vacant properties that are left open. And they have a lot cleaning process, again, for vacant properties. So this is your current tool belt, so to speak, to deal with nuisance-related problems for real property. What Mr. Sermons was talking about is what we're proposing to create sort of this more coordinated effort and to give you more tools. The first tool, as Mr. Sermons mentioned, is the Property Maintenance Code. As Mr. Sermons said, the city used to have, all cities used to have a property maintenance code which set out your standards for property, not only the exterior but the interior, and got very specific into standards that everybody had to live up to. That was replaced with the Florida Building Code, which, as you know, really only addresses construction issues and does not get into individual property maintenance issues. In your current Code of Ordinances, there are sprinkled throughout some property maintenance standards, but there's nothing that's a comprehensive guide that provides all property owners with notice of what the property standards they need to live up to. So if we go to the next slide, these are the benefits of what we're proposing with the Property Maintenance Code Ordinance. This would create a one catalog of all property maintenance standards, including your exterior standards, your interior standards, plumbing, fire, an assortment of things are addressed in this. The benefit to this is it provides notice to everybody that this is the city's standard. Talking with Mr. Sermons about if this ordinance is adopted and rolling it out, providing this property maintenance code to new owners, to existing owners, and let them understand here's the standards that the city is requiring of all property owners. It will also be a significant resource for code compliance. Right now, the code officers sometimes have to cite to more general provisions and cannot cite to specific violations at the property. This will allow them to give very specific guidance to the owner as to what needs to be brought into compliance. Right now, they sometimes have to engage in lengthy conversations, which is certainly helpful to the property owner, but because the property owner has questions about what the exact violation is, this property maintenance code will allow them to do that. And finally, it will also be a resource to your building official when they go out to do inspections, so they can also show property owners what the standards are and have a good reference guide to the same. Moving on to the second ordinance that we are proposing, this is the code compliance ordinance, which Mr. Sermons mentioned we're going to overhaul. Like I said, you currently have an existing code enforcement ordinance. It's a traditional process involving 2 hearings before your special magistrate. The ordinance that you currently have does not include a process for a lien reduction request or a lien release. Most ordinances that you see nowadays in other cities, and certainly for Palm Beach County, they address the process.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
but we do have a process for lien release. It's
Absolutely.
not codified in the code.
It's just not codified, and the concern that Ms. Bostic and I share with that is there's not notice to the public in general as to, well, if I end up having fines accrued on my property or there's a lien established, if I bring the property into compliance, can I get a reduction? What does that reduction look like? What's really that process? Ms. Bostic certainly has established a good sort of internal policy of how she handles those requests, but this would codify that process and give more notice to your public about what they can expect if they get into that status where they have fines and liens on their property. So that's what we're looking to do there. The other thing as to your current process is it doesn't address the administrative costs that your staff looks to recover, certainly in repeat violator cases, and it doesn't address having a fund set up so that we could actually assist those property owners that are facing a hardship. So if I go to the next page where I talk about the benefits of what's being proposed with this amendment to the code compliance ordinance, the main provision, if you throw out all other provisions, the main provision that would be highly beneficial to code compliance is to set up the separate account so that some of those funds that are recovered through code compliance, whether it's fines, whether it's liens, whether it's administrative costs, a percentage of those costs could go into a separate account. And then that account could be used to assist those property owners that have a hardship. Because often what happens in our code compliance hearings is that someone's in violation of, say, landscaping, or they need to paint their house. They may be senior, they may have a disability, and they're on a fixed income. They can't afford necessarily to make those improvements. And we have limited resources. We can advise different outreach programs. We can have them talk with the CRA and try to assist them in that regard. But this would give code compliance an account that they could say, hey, these folks have shown a hardship. Let's see if we can help them out to bring their property up to standard, and then they don't get into a fine situation or a lien situation. So that is a key component of the proposed amendment. The other amendments that are being proposed are consistent with what you're seeing with other cities in the county in terms of moving with a more efficient process away from the standard 2-hearing mandatory process and creating some more efficiencies so that for those property owners that don't reach voluntary compliance, we have more efficient process to try to make them come into compliance through some type of process and enforcement. Finally, the last ordinance that Mr. Sermons mentioned that we are proposing, this is a chronic nuisance ordinance. You may have heard this being used at other cities. The city of West Palm Beach uses this ordinance quite frequently, and it's an ordinance that the police department has brought up from time to time. Currently, as it states on this slide, you don't have this type of ordinance that would address excessive calls for police services or those situations where someone has a code compliance order against them and they're just simply not doing anything to come into compliance. As Mr. Sermons mentioned, these excessive calls for police services are a drain on the police department, takes away from other services that they can provide throughout the community. And obviously, code compliance, as I mentioned, comes to a screeching halt once we get that order finding them in violation or even a lien. Sometimes nothing is happening and the property remains in a state of non-compliance. So with the chronic nuisance ordinance, the benefits that the city would have is you'd have a process where the police department could address those properties with excessive calls for service, and code compliance could also have a process where the property owner is just not doing anything to bring their property into compliance after they were found in violation. So this is truly another process to obtain voluntary compliance. You work with the property owner in this process to develop a written action plan of how they're going to fix the nuisance. There is some enforcement mechanism in this process, but it's really just another tool to approach these property owners with and say, okay, we've been to your house 5 times in the last 30 days for noise violations. The police department is now going to require you to develop an action plan of how you're going to abate that noise violation. That's what we're proposing with this process. West Palm Beach has it and uses it effectively. Other cities have it, and I can tell you that at some of the cities I represent, even just sending out that letter to the property owner from the police department to say your excessive calls for service qualifies you as a chronic nuisance, even just that letter can be effective. So this process is to allow for that letter to go out, and if it doesn't assist the property owner in voluntary compliance, then we have some enforcement mechanisms thereafter. So just in summary, this is a coordinated approach. We are recommending with these 3 ordinances, 2 new ordinances, the Property Maintenance Code and the Chronic Nuisance Ordinance, and with an overhaul to your existing code enforcement, code compliance ordinance. These would add significant tools to your current tool belt, and as stated on this slide, these would be all of the available tools you would have after adopting these ordinances that staff could use in a coordinated effort to assist property owners through voluntary compliance at first, but if not, there is a process to take them through to obtain compliance from the property owner and for the city. So that is my sort of overview and presentation to you tonight. My understanding is staff will come forward with these ordinances for your consideration, and once adopted, this would allow for our coordinated process. I'm happy to
Madam Chair.
Any questions?
Yes, go ahead, Councilwoman Botel.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Godot, for this presentation. I was thrilled when I did my agenda review on Monday to see that we were going to have some teeth, if you will, in the ordinances. My concern has been, and I guess will continue to be, that whatever we do is done in a very equitable manner. For example, I have often heard from constituents that a neighbor may be cited for something that the neighbor on the other side is not cited for, and that there's not a consistency in terms of the citations that are given. So I'm hoping that with these new ordinances, there will also come a higher level of consistency in terms of the way that code enforcement agents look at properties and evaluate the conditions. But thank you again for your work.
Yes, and Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I can comment on that.
Yes, go ahead.
You're absolutely right. We do often in the code compliance hearing hear that comment that my neighbor or the folks down the street have the same issue and haven't been cited for it. And I know Ms. Bostic strives for her code enforcement officers to do sweeps and to identify on a street the number of properties that have different violations. Sometimes what we struggle with in code compliance is that your neighbor may actually have a lien on their property and may actually already have an order found against them for that same violation. They just haven't brought it into compliance. So we often, sometimes at the hearing, Ms. Bostic certainly usually knows the history of every property in the city and can tell you if the property next door actually has a pending fine or lien on it. But please be assured that with the current process and the proposed process, code compliance is always striving to be fair and equitable and make sure that they do notice and they do talk to property owners about every violation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Councilwoman Miller Henderson.
Thank you so much for the presentation. This has definitely been something that I felt that we needed to do such a long time ago. We have constantly had the high number of calls that have been made to nuisance properties, and you have your residents and constituents telling us, hey, you know, the police comes there 6 times a week, you know, why is it that nothing's being done about them? And so I'm glad to see that we're moving forward to being able to put some teeth into this, because I know in speaking with the officers, they're tired too, but, you know, unfortunately we hadn't had anything in order to enforce what we wanted to do. So I'm glad to see this, and I know that Major Lewis has been working very hard on the convenience stores and other businesses that may have been a chronic nuisance in our city. And so I thank you, Police Department, Code Enforcement, Code Compliance, whatever the new word of the day is, Development Services, Mr. Sermon, and all, for being able to bring this forward so that we can get something done about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Thank you so much for your presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sermons, for your diligence and your work with this project.
Madam Chair. Absolutely. So, I'm sorry, can I add?
Yes, go ahead.
This is a Mr. Sermons question, and it's specifically to code. And I wanted to ask Mr. Curlin, but he was so long-winded, I did not want to take any more time. But Mr. Evans, Mr. Sermons, I had my staff person to reach out to the United States Postal Services Maintenance Department down in Fort Lauderdale. I would like us specifically to look at our post office. If you go in there, that's probably the worst building that I've seen in the city. And obviously there's the outside portion, but certainly there is no maintenance whatsoever. And I know Ms. Busby, I had a conversation with her. I hope this code doesn't we're not preempted to cite another government agency specifically for compliance and not for the money, because I said to Ms. Busby today, I do not want to put the squeeze on our local residents if we aren't holding the post office responsible and any other government agency that so happens to have a property in the city that's not doing what they should be doing. So certainly, I want to make sure that we, if necessary, in sending a violation, we have to do it, because we can't have a double standard, and that's the same that I heard here today. So I want to make sure that we, you know, take an approach to address all of the properties, irrespective if it's the school district. You know, they can't just, you know, have properties that are not in repair and, you know, has some aesthetics problems on the outside. So I want to see if we can look into that, Mr. Evans and Mr. Sermons.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
We will certainly do that.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentations. It is 7:34, and to start with our public comments. Comments from the public. Please be reminded, the City Council has adopted rules of decorum, public conduct during official meetings, which has been posted at the front desk. In an effort to preserve order, if any of the rules are not adhered to, the council chair may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting, and or the building if necessary. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Public comment shall begin at 7:30 p.m. unless there is no further business of the City Council, which in the event it shall begin sooner. In addition, if any item is being considered at 7:30, then comments from the public shall begin immediately after the item has been concluded. Any person who would like to speak during public comments, please fill out a public comment card located at the front desk and give it to the staff before the public comment section is announced. Madam Clerk?
Madam Chair, members of the board, the acceptance of public comment cards for the public comment section of the agenda is now closed. Lloyd Brown.
You know, I'm not here to make any friends. I'm here to help the people that I live around. Mayor, you know what? This is the most I heard you say since I've been coming over here. You know, most people think you're missing in action, and that's no lie. And probably they'll see you around Election Day. That's what they said. And, you know, people, you know, my neighbors, they come out, the mayor don't have, you know, no kind of authority. You know, but let me tell you something. With your title, that's your authority, because you can go anywhere. You just don't know how to use it, but I do. See, that's your problem. I'm not trying to be on the telly or in the news. I don't really believe nothing in the news but the obituary, and that's the only thing you really can believe, and that's almost like here. Are y'all able to walk on water right now? Because you're going to need to get trust from these people. And I'm going to tell you, I got grass in half of my yard because y'all do a half, job. Honestly. I mean, I know some of y'all up there got rentals. Go at the rental people who renting out places. Go inside their places. You want to go at the citizens who working hard and probably got kids that don't even have a job because the house on the next street, there's somebody renting out. They got these Spanish people coming in there doing the work in the yard. But it's a brother living there, and he's on Section 8, him and his wife. There's no washing machine. They don't have a washer or dryer or nothing. And you go down here to the wash house down here on a Saturday, most of those women down there, they own housing. They own housing. And these people getting $1,700, $1,800 a month renting these places. You wouldn't come to my city bringing this shit here. You wouldn't come here and tell a girl, well, you're going to have to cut the grass. And then she knows she's going to have to get in this place, so she's being pushed because she's got to find a place for her kids. I don't give a damn if she's out there with a boy who sells drugs. She still got kids. Y'all sit here talking about cleaning up the city, making all these new ordinances. Where in the hell that lady from? I mean, do she know that it's people who got tractor trailers in their yard, but because they got grass, the code enforcement ride right by them? That sucked. I mean, I heard Ms. Botel talking, she makes sense. And I heard Trogic over there, he makes sense. You got all these stores around here. You tell me you don't go in them stores and see how screwed up they are on the inside, but yet you're going to tell a man about a trailer in his yard and you got a tractor trailer in a house that somebody renting down the street sitting up in the yard? Do you have to have grass to break these violations? Because I'll put some grass over there, and I'll leave my trailer there. And that lady who came here talking about changing all that, you need to have an open mind. You can't have some of these people you got in there because they got childish attitudes. If they get into an argument with a person, they're going to be back and forth.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Madam Chair, members of the board, that concludes public comments.
Thank you. Next item is number 5, Madam Clerk.
Yes, it is, Madam Chair. Police Athletic League Program Update. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have public comments on this item. The acceptance of public comments on this item is now closed.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, Council. First, I would like to bring up Officer Nance. and recognize one of our youth and his mother who happened to come out tonight. Madam Chair, we got National PAL certification and accreditation back in September we applied for. Since then, we have competed this year in 2 tournaments, and as you can see, we have recruited in some talented kids, just about 60 of them, and you can see they have brought home 3 first-place trophies and a second-place trophy. We also have on the program this year coming up in the next month or 2 fishing tournaments. Officer Nance and the team have done a wonderful job in, 1, recruiting, going to our schools, going to our neighborhoods, and getting kids to participate in PAL. One of the things that we have to do in PAL, we reach out to PAL. We know we have a wonderful park and rec right here in the city of Riviera Beach. We have a great Boys and Girls Club. But what PAL does, it bridges the gap with law enforcement and the community, our youth. We have to keep them, 1, engaged and unengaged into criminal activities. We are just about finished our Board of Directors 501c3, and we're going to have that organized within the next month or 2 and put the board together. And we have, I want to let Officer Nance speak about the dance tournament, the dance competition coming up, and the fishing tournament.
Good evening, Officer Nance, Riviera Beach Police Department, 16 years now. First of all, I want to thank everyone, the councilmen, councilwomen.
Can you get a little closer to the mic?
I want to thank everyone, the councilmen, councilwomen, mayor, city manager. Like the chief was saying with PAL, we're building a relationship with these kids. We're playing against basketball teams that's been together for years now. These are some kids we recruited, H.L. Watkins, John F. Kennedy, schools just around the neighborhood. These kids are, the biggest thing with PAL is we're communicating, we're bringing the kids closer. I have a lot of kids now that's thinking about becoming cops. I know when I was in elementary, being a cop was a big thing when I was in elementary. I don't think it's like that anymore because of what's going on around America. In PAL, we're not just doing sports. Each kid is given an assignment once a month to be able to tell us about a current event. We're teaching the kids how to tie a tie. We're just more like a big brother. Hopefully this is something where our goal is to have these kids to gain trust in the police department, their parents. I brought one of the kids here. He's so excited to be in PAL. Most of the parents, they can't stop thanking me, which they need to be thanking the chief and you all, because you guys are the one that agreed for PAL to come to the city. The dance team, we got 30 girls. They're practicing in front of Wells Rec. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, they had something out there today for Mother's Day. They're getting ready to go over to Fort Myers for a big tournament, which that'll be towards the end of May. Then they'll be entering another tournament, a dance competition, I want to call it. I want to say in the middle of June. Fishing, we got a lot of kids, we got a lot of parents just asking, what do we have for my son? My son, 8 years old, what do we have for him? So we're getting ready to start up a fishing league where we have 2 groups of 15. We're going to have 5 cops per group. That's going to be 1 cop that's in control of 3 kids while we're around the water. You got parents that's so excited, you got kids so excited. So we're going to get the flyers passed out and we're going to be starting a fishing league. In this fishing league during the summer, we're looking at going out fishing 3 times a week. Once school starts back, we'll be looking at twice a month. So that's just one of the few things that we're going to be doing in PAL. My biggest thing is just to be able to get these kids outside of the city, to see outside of the city. Before I joined PAL back in 1989 as a basketball player, the biggest thing was for me is when they took me from out of Miami-Dade And we went off to Savannah, Georgia. That was just the world to me because I knew nowhere else. I knew nothing else. So, and I think this would be big for our kids, especially for the ninth graders. I want to be able to take them out to some of these universities where they can see there's something outside of the neighborhood that we're living in. If it's okay, I'd like to let one of the players speak. Let him tell you what he think about Powell.
I think Powell. Well, first of all, my name is Jordan Quince, and I play for Riviera Beach Powell. And first of all, I would like to thank the chief for allowing us to play on this team. And I think the Riviera Beach Powell is a great program because they teach us not only basketball, but how to be young men. They take us out of the neighborhood, and they give us something to look forward to. Also, after games, they take us out to eat, just in case, like, we're hungry. No, I'm not.
It's okay.
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's all
No,
right.
you're doing very well. You're doing very good. Go ahead. You are doing excellent, young man. Keep talking. You're doing very well.
Yeah, and some kids, they don't have anything to look forward to but this, and I think that's great.
Thank you. Very good.
So Madam Chair, I got a chance to go out and do some drills with the kids and some running exercise, and it was the worst mistake of my life. Not doing it again. These kids they let you know that you're old now, and boy, you feel it. This is some of the best talent I've seen. One of the things that we have is a maintenance program with PAL. Maintenance meaning our police officer who's involved in PAL, they do follow-up. They check with our students, and I say student first, they're checking on their grades, making sure they attend school. They're checking their behavior, who they're hanging out with. And that's okay if you hang out with a bad kid, make him come along, and we're gonna make him into a good kid. And that's what we're saying. We're trying to recruit more. Like I said, we're up to about 60 youth, and we know that number is gonna grow. We're coming into the summer month, and we're gonna turn it up and turn it on. So you're gonna see PAL do some wonderful things within the next few months. And again, I've heard many times people say, thank you, Chief. No, the thank you goes to first Officer Nance and to the youth and the parents, the mother. Can I say hello to the mom back here?
Hi,
Thank
Mom.
you. So when we get our parents first involved, because a lot of our communication has to go to them. If I can start an adult PAL league, I would do so, because bridging our community with police officers and vice versa is so important, and I think we're on the right track.
Yes, thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you,
Question?
young
Madam
man.
Chair.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
just a question. First of all, I wanted to thank that young man who brought me to tears just now, so kind of glad I'm not sitting there. Thank you for being there, sir. But for Officer Nance, I wondered, have you been in touch with Captain Rich Brochu of the Florida Fishing Academy to help support the fishing program?
We text, we were in touch with each other, lost contact. I think he got a little busy. Miss Mary Cope had us three-way connecting with each other. We were supposed to set up a meeting, and I think he got a little busy.
Okay, well, keep after him, because he can provide you with rods and reels that he gets from Tom Twyford at the West Palm Beach Fishing Club.
Yes.
And they're free, so he'll take them out on the boat and everything, so it will be a good contact for you to make.
Will do.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Miller Anderson?
Just wanted to say thank you all for being able to follow through with this and get this program up and running. One of the things, I don't know if I missed it when I stepped out for a minute, but I do want to see if we can look into getting maybe boxing as one of our components, or wrestling, something that's different from our Parks and Rec, where we're able to have our kids participate in other fields that we typically don't see a lot in our Parks and Rec area in most cities. I mean, I've seen it mostly in the PAL. But I think that would be an area that we could probably get a lot of attraction to from many of the kids in the neighborhoods. But I just want to thank you all for your help in getting this program going. And do I know this young man right here that's been up here speaking? He looks so familiar.
Madam Chair?
Do we know each other?
I think I was gonna ask that same question. Do I know you?
They from Riviera
Okay.
Beach, of course you
Looks
probably have seen
familiar.
them.
How do I know you? Oh, that's my cousin.
Yeah, okay.
So, Madam Chair, I believe that's why the chief brought him up here.
Ah,
Because I was
see.
the toughest one to sell on the PAL program. And I certainly, I think you might have won me over, Chief.
All right.
I didn't know.
That doesn't happen often, yeah.
But certainly, it's not, Madam Chair, if I can?
Yes, go ahead.
I wanted to say, Chief, you know, my sole concern is that we have existing structures in place, and I thought about our Parks and Rec, and there's also another program that we're doing, travel basketball. So, you know, I don't know if they're doing anything, but they did come before us asking for benefits at some point. But, you know, certainly we already have existing teams, and I think it would always help because, you know, there's 3 different silos of children that we're serving. And I think that we can kind of, you know, collaborate and cohesively make them all work together. So thank you for the work that you're doing, Chief. And that was a really good move. You must have knew that he was related to me.
I checked and double checked.
Madam Chair, if I,
Yes, go ahead.
if I may, since he is seen so favorably from Councilman McCoy, I'm going to have him present the rest of the items this evening. But, you know, one thing when you guys do go fishing, remember, it's called fishing, not catching. So, good luck. But great job, Chief. And certainly, Chief was talking to me that he's going to bring the rest of the kids and have them share a little bit about their experience in PAL. So I know it's catching a lot of steam and a lot of momentum. And so we're excited, and thank you for the board and the community support with regards to this initiative.
Yes, thank you so much, Chief, for your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we will be inviting you guys out for to join us in some of the tournaments.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item, Madam Clerk.
Item number 6, recognition of Detective Jamel Headings for his outstanding acts of bravery by the State Law Enforcement Chiefs Association. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have public comment cards on this item. The acceptance of public comment cards on this item is now closed.
Thank you. Chief?
Good evening again, Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, Council. Again, I'm Chief Nate Osgood, Riviera Beach. I'm going to give you what we have here, and then I'm going to introduce the detective. Last February, Detective Heading was driving southbound on I-95 in an unmarked police car in plain clothes. He saw a trooper vehicle parked on the side off the street, what we routinely would call like a traffic stop. And we've always been taught there's nothing routine about any call we go on. Well, Detective Heading, while driving southbound, he does a U-turn to just give a backup for Trooper Joe Bullock. Trooper Bullock, as he gets out of his car, he puts on his vest, takes his firearm with him, and he starts to approach, and the individual is running towards the detective. As he's running towards the detective, Detective Headings realized this is not just a traffic stop. He sees a trooper lying on the ground. The individual takes a shot at Detective Headings, or the individual running. Detective Headings return fire, striking the individual in the chest. The individual then takes cover, and a self-inflicted gunshot wound took his own life. That day, what Detective Heading did, we practice this, we teach this, but to go in the field and do this is something different. So last week, the State of Florida Law Enforcement Association Chiefs of Police awarded Detective Heading with the Special President's Award for bravery because he went above and beyond the call of duty on that day. I'm going to let Detective Hedden say a few words, and he can tell you more about that day than anyone else.
Thank you. Yeah, I just just want to once again thank the city of Riviera Beach, the Riviera Beach Police Department for the support. That day changed my life forever, and it really showed me how important that the training that we get from our training instructors and our command staff, and how much it saves lives, and it's just something I'll never forget, and I'm just grateful I work for this city, and I'm happy for all the support that you've all showed me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this award came at a good time for Detective Hedden because we're now entering the National Law Enforcement Week coming up next week. And tomorrow we're doing our National Day of Prayer at the Police Department. I hope you can join us.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our Riviera Beach Police Department. Madam Clerk?
Item number 7, ordinance number 4167, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 20, Article 5, Division 2, Cross-Connection Control, to enact cross-connection control regulations to protect the city's drinking water system from contaminants, providing a conflict clause, providing a codification clause, providing a severability clause, providing a savings clause, and providing an effective date. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do have a public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comments on this item is now closed.
Ms. Jacobs. Yeah, we can go ahead and take a motion for that. Can we get a motion to approve ordinance number 4167?
So moved.
Second.
Very good. Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Lanier, other council persons in your respective places, Mayor Felder, City Manager Evans, and Mrs. Nguyen. For the record, my name is Deirdre Jacobs. I'm the Assistant City Manager here with the City of Riviera Beach, and I'm the Acting Executive Director of the Utility Special District. This evening, I'll be presenting to you, along with Mr. Stephen Hunter of Holtz Engineering, an item that deals with the Cross-Connection Control Program. If you read in your backup, a Cross-Connection Program, what it does is it puts forth and establishes protocols wherein we have activities in place and tasks in place, stipulations in place, and guidelines that provide different ways in which we'll ensure that our water source is protected from contamination. Cross-connection occurs when there is a temporary or permanent connection between the city's public water system or consumers' potable water system and any source or system containing non-potable water or other substances such as pool water or irrigation systems. When that occurs, it is important for us to install backflow devices that are designed to protect our portable water in the city's water supply system from contaminants where piping may be cross-connected and such cross-connections cannot be eliminated. Thereby, as a result of us going through some of our systems over at Utility Special District, we realized as a staff that we needed to look into visiting our program to ensure that our water supply is free of possible contaminations. So back in January, we engaged the services of one of our continuing services consultants, Holtz Engineering, to work along with us to assess our system and determine whether or not we had gaps in our system. To that end, we are bringing before you, an ordinance for your consideration for approval, which establishes those different procedures and processes in order for us to comply with Florida statutes. Here to assist with the presentation of this particular item is Mr. Stephen Hunter. and he's a consultant with Holtz Engineering.
Good evening to Madam Chair Lanier, Pro Chair Miller Anderson, Council Botel, Mr. McCray, and Mr. Lawson, to the City Manager and all other staff in their respective places, and to the Mayor. For the record, my name is Stephen Hunter, and I am here tonight on behalf of Holtz Consultant to discuss with you ordinance number 4167. On, I believe it was April the 7th, I did a virtual with you all, kind of bringing you up some history on basically what consists of a backflow program, cross connection, what have you. Just to give you some back history, what we're trying to do here today is to bring into accordance and bring you all into compliance with what the state statute of Florida section 62-555-360. Basically what that says, and that was a final statute that was issued in 2014 by the state of Florida FDEP. And basically it says that any water purveyor, meaning the utility company that has over 10,000 plus customers, must enact a cross-connection control program. So you all contracted with Holtz Consultant to review what you had. So what we basically did, we went back and we studied all the data that you had somewhere around in 1984, and the most recent information was the ordinance in section 2, chapter 2, if you would, was the most recent and current ordinance that you all had to deal with anything with your cross-connection control program. So in dealing with that, we work closely with your staff, various departments, including your fire department, your construction services, and of course along with your utilities, and then to administrative and to law. And so what we bring before you today is a draft, if you would, for your consideration and approval of your ordinance. And the ordinance does follow the Florida statute. We followed it to the clarity. What we've also done in putting this statute together, we researched 4 other sister municipalities in your area and found that what we're asking you to move forward with is basically what the all others do. They build an ordinance and then they follow up with a manual. The manual would be the working document that your staff will be utilizing on a day-to-day service to make sure that everyone is in compliance with your cross-connection control program. And let me just stop there and say this. The most basic fundamental issue related to a cross-connection control program is health, safety, and welfare. Your utility companies can do all that they can, but at point of delivery, if we have a problem, whereas we have what we call a backflow, which would have an occurrence where the pressure is negative than what would be less than what is on the city side than was on the customer side, you have backflow. You also could have back siphonage. And the most important approach is we're trying to prevent this from happening, because at the end of the day, the water that's in your pipelines has no identity. So at this point here, we are asking you all to review and approve Ordinance 4167 based on what we presented to you through your law department. And I am here open and ready for any questions or comments that you might have regarding the ordinance.
Thank you. Did we have any public comment cards?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do have public comment.
Okay, we'll go to public comment cards and then we'll come back.
Dolores Williams.
Good evening to the mayor.
Good evening.
And the citizens of Riviera Beach. I'm here,
Talking to the mic, please.
I'm here on behalf, I'm going to speak on number 7 about the water. And I'd like to give all 5 of you a copy of my water bill. I had a copy here of my water bill. I had a credit of $18. Then I paid $120. They said I had a credit of $138. Then I got a water bill, say $156.81. When they took my credit, I had started off with a credit of $18.20, but I'm ending up now owing y'all out $138. I'm owing you $18 and some cents. When I first started out, I had a credit, but now I got a big water bill. I want y'all to look at this water bill. I'm gonna make sure you get it. And I need y'all to check on this water bill for me. See why it's so high. They told me this and they told me that. I don't think a single parent, single person, widow, should have to pay that much for no water bill 1 month. $156, got a credit, $138. Had a balance of $18 credit, paid $120, then I owe you $18 more at $138. You say my water bill is $156. It's in living color here. I got y'all in black and white. And hear about the traffic calm.
Ma'am, you can only speak on the water bill issue.
You don't speak on it?
No, you can only speak on the issue that's before you.
Okay, well, this is the issue here, and I'm going to say something else. You keep cutting me off every time I get up there, you cut up. I want to get a comment about the Riviera Beach Police Department. You had a bad chase here on
You can only
on
speak
6th
to
Street.
the item
On
that is
6th
on
Street,
the agenda.
they had damage.
If you
all
want to
people
be
got
removed,
killed,
we will have you
and
removed,
I
ma'am.
tried
Can
to
I get someone to come
here,
and
I got these.
escort this
We
young
got the
lady back to her
citizen
seat,
on
please?
these streets that want to have the police and the city council to do
Can I
something
get
for our
someone to
street.
come and escort this young lady back to her seat, please?
Well, I think you are wrong. And for the citizen of Riviera Beach, I will be coming up to
you, ma'am.
every street to see. You doing a traffic calm tomorrow night?
Yes, ma'am.
And
Could you
I will
please
be
have a
there,
seat,
and we
ma'am.
need
Thank
to
you
stop
so much
that. We need
for
to
your
stop
comments in regards to the water. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, we sure will. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. All right, very good. Yes, ma'am. Is that the end of public comment? Is that the end of public comment? Yes, thank you. All right, very good. Is there anything else? Are there any comments from the board in regards to the item that is before us?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Hunter, can you give me that statute? Because I thought I heard you say 62 and that was it. What else is it, sir?
It's 62.555.
Yes, it was 62-555.360.
Okay. So is that a rule or is it a statute? Because there's a difference.
It's a Florida statute.
Okay.
Yes, it's Florida statute.
It's Florida Administrative Code.
That's correct. Florida Administrative Code.
Okay.
So that's not an actual statute?
Correct.
Okay. Because I'm looking in Florida statutes in chapter 62 and I didn't find it. So this applies to public water utilities as well as private?
This refers to community water supply with connections in excess of 10,000.
Okay. So my question is, would it apply for both a public system ran by a government entity as well as a private?
Yes, sir. Again, any water system that is 10,000 plus, they're under this regulation.
10,000 plus?
10,000 plus connections.
Okay, so if you're less than that, then this doesn't apply to you?
There's a deviation from that, sir, and to be honest with you, I have to go back and look at the chapter because most utilities I deal with is plus 10,000. But what falls into play is I'll have to go back and read the full statute because what it does is when you fall below 10,000, it falls and makes some of the responsibility back to your water plant because of the lesser of the connections themselves.
So this ordinance, we would be able to apply this ordinance throughout the city's entire water system?
Yes, sir. This ordinance, we're coming forward with you tonight because we're looking at it as a utility service area for the city of Riviera Beach.
Thank you. My next question is, that's perfect that you say utility service area because we service areas that's outside of the municipal boundaries of the city. Now, here's a really important question, and I know you said you have an extensive amount of time working in the water utility field. Being that this is regarding utility service area, Riviera Beach is unique in that manner that we service Palm Beach Shores, which is outside of the municipal boundaries, and sections of unincorporated Palm Beach County. Based on your experience, how do we apply our code, which is founded based on our charter, and our charter sets forth the city's sovereign control within the municipal boundaries? How can we enact an ordinance based on municipal boundaries and have it to apply outside of the city in those two service areas when we don't have sovereign authority?
I'll try to cover this way. This talks about your connections.
So I'm not speaking of the connections, the applicability of the code. How can we use this code to go outside the city? How do we have that authority?
Okay, what I'm not going to do is I won't be a lawyer on this, but let me tell you, my experience, as you mentioned, that when we're writing these ordinances and adopting them, this deals with your water plant and the service connections associated with your water plant, because this actual report that you report back to the state actually deals with your monthly operating report for your water plant itself. It doesn't take in consideration that you're servicing Mangonia Park residents. It doesn't look at it from that standpoint. It says your connections. So in essence, I'll use Mangonia Park for instance. It's a big water user of yours. You have one device for Mangonia Park. That device has to be under this ordinance. And again, just saying every connection within your service area.
Okay, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Evans.
By virtue of interlocal agreement or contractual language with those municipalities, that's how you govern those mechanisms that we are looking to put in place. So that's how, it's not uncommon for municipalities to provide utility services outside their municipal jurisdictions. So by virtue of a contractual agreement, you would just stipulate that this is the conditions in order for us to provide service to those entities.
Okay, so in that case, we would be, I guess, reintroducing the interlocal agreement to encompass this?
That is correct. We would have the contractual language in an interlocal agreement that would memorialize what the changes would be with our partner agencies.
But see, and this goes to the very foundation of what I'm saying. So that interlocal agreement would then exist, not with the city, but obviously with the utility special district, since they're the ones that actually providing the water services, that owns the infrastructure, and quite frankly, that owns the owns and manages the service that goes to those areas, those utility service areas outside the municipal boundaries.
That is correct, but the district doesn't have the authority to memorialize this in a form of a ordinance.
And that goes back to my question, what regulates or what sets forth that this has to be codified by ordinance and not resolution? Because I started off my question by asking, does this apply both to public and private utilities? And if it was a private utility, they wouldn't be adopting ordinances.
We could adopt it by resolution, Mr. McCoy.
That's all I wanted to know. So I would like to see this on the USD side, because I can't sit here and think that we can pass an ordinance that tells somebody in Gramercy Park how they're under our control.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
But you do have an ordinance that's in place, and an ordinance can't, resolution cannot supersede an ordinance. So you would have to amend the ordinance to incorporate language that provides modifications by virtue of a resolution to be able to effectively allow for the district to regulate it to some degree.
Okay, well, I read the charter, and the only thing from the charter that I read from the USD is that official action is done by resolution. It doesn't make reference to an ordinance over on the USD side.
That's correct. That's why we brought it before the council as an ordinance, because only the council can adopt ordinances.
Right.
Once the ordinance is adopted, the USD could adopt a resolution basically adopting the provisions of the ordinance.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, very good. Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Very good. Any other questions of Ms. Jacobs or Mr. Hunter? Madam Chair? I'm sorry, Madam Clerk.
Councilperson Lawson.
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy.
Yes.
Councilperson Votel.
Yes.
Pro Tem Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Chair Lanier.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Next item.
Madam Chair, members of the board, item number 8 was deleted. We're on to item number 9, resolution number 4221, a resolution of the City of Riviera Beach, City Council, Palm Beach County, Florida, authorizing and directing the Director of Finance and Administrative Services to proceed toward the issuance of the city's public improvement revenue bonds in one or more series in accordance with the city's debt management policy, authorizing the officials of the city to do all things necessary or advisable in connection therewith, and providing an effective date. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
Move to approve Resolution 4221.
Second.
Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair, this item before you is going to be presented by Mr. Randy Sherman, Finance Director.
Good evening, everyone. Randy Sherman. What you have in front of you is what is known as a reimbursement resolution. What it is not, this is not an authority to go out and borrow. This is not a final decision on how the fire stations will ultimately be financed and paid for. What this resolution does is it really preserves the rights of the city to be reimbursed for costs incurred on the fire stations from a future bond sale, if a future bond sale occurs. Let me kind of explain a little bit. Back before 1986, municipalities used to issue debt, tax-exempt debt, take that debt and invest it in taxable instruments, and in essence, make money just by borrowing and investing. In 1986 Tax Act, the IRS said that ain't going to happen anymore. If you are going to borrow funds, you have to specify specifically what the purpose of those funds are. You have to specify it before you issue the debt. And then anything from the date you issue the debt going forward can come out of the bond proceeds, unless you have approved a reimbursement resolution, which again says, hey, I'm going to be incurring these costs on this project. I don't need to issue the debt today, but I will be issuing it tomorrow. I want to be able to recapture those costs and get reimbursed out of the debt. So what this resolution does is it will draw a line in the sand, today's date, and it'll say any costs that we incur on the fire stations from this point forward will be eligible to be reimbursed out of future bonds. This resolution was prepared by the city's bond council. We do this on, once we start talking about capital projects and financing, this is a standard resolution that we would bring forward. I'll also be bringing you forward a similar resolution to the district board on the water treatment facility. And I can take any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for this item? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Councilperson McCoy?
Yes.
Councilperson Botel?
Yes.
Councilperson Lawson?
Yes.
Pro Tem Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
That motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Next item.
Item number 10, resolution number 44-21, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving site plan application from Florida Power and Light Company to install an FP&L solar array and battery pilot facility occupying an approximate 21 acre of land area of the total 70 acre parcel of land located immediately west of Interstate 95 at 2400 Fort West Boulevard and identified by parcel control numbers 56, 43, 42, 31, 04, 001, 0000, having an industrial future land use designation and a general industrial zoning designation, providing for conditions of approval and providing for an effective date. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the resolution to approve the site plan for FP&L solar array.
Second.
Mr. Sherman.
Good evening again, Madam Chair, members of the board. And I will now walk you through the items of this site plan. First, on the screen before you, you can see an outline of the property boundaries of the subject property for this site plan. The existing conditions have changed a bit from what you all may be most accustomed to viewing as you travel down Interstate 95. The two fuel tanks that you see at the bottom part of the screen have since been demolished to make way for different energy investments for the owner of the property. The land use is industrial and utilities, and the zoning is general industrial, recreation, and open space. It is on our principal arterial design standards overlay zone. The lot size is 70 acres. The photos before you now show the south view from the property, as well as the southwest view, and then facing west. At the bottom, you can see facing west from the southeast corner of the property, facing northwest from the southeast corner of the property, and facing north from the southeast corner of the property. The photos before you show facing north from the southwest corner of the property, facing north, facing east, and then from the northwest corner of the property facing east, facing southeast, and then facing south from the property. Before you is the proposed site plan for the owner of the property. Again, the use is utility. The structures that would be installed are arrays of solar panels and batteries. This would be a pilot facility for Florida Power and Light, the owner of the property. The parking required for this site plan is 23 spaces. They provide 28, and the access is from Port West Boulevard. And you can see the access point indicated by the arrows. And the affected areas of this already developed site are indicated by the red dashed line. The primary portion of the site is where the solar array will be installed, the former location of the fuel tanks, as well as the electric vehicle charging station to the right on your screen. The picture in front of you shows the view corridors that the owner of the site is proposing into the site. It is a pilot project and a demonstration project for their investment in renewable energies. And so they are interested in persons being able to see the installation from certain points from the interstate traffic. This is a rendering of what the view corridor will look like from Interstate 95, and you can see by the gray where the solar panels will be installed. This is an additional view from Interstate 95. The fuel tank with the stars and stripes on it no longer exists. However, the storage building towards the right will remain after this update to the site plan.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So, Mr. Sermons, are you correct? Those were fuel tanks? Because for all these years, I never even knew. I thought those were water tanks.
My understanding is fuel tanks, but I will allow the owner and the applicant to clarify if I'm mistaken on that. They are present virtually, and they will be providing a presentation after this.
Yes, go ahead.
When was that removed from there? When were they removed?
I would have to defer to the applicant on that question as well.
Guess I never.
But was it your understanding, Councilwoman Miller,
That it was fuel? No, I never.
Yeah,
did that.
I mean, I would hope that wasn't, but you know, I don't know.
This is Sophia Eccleston. It was water tanks.
Repeat that, please.
They were water tanks.
Okay.
I stand corrected. I beg your pardon.
That's pretty. Thank you, right? But that would have been pretty dangerous to have that much fuel. Hey, hello, Miss Eccleston. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Right. Very good. Go ahead, Mr. Sermons.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The building at the bottom right, a warehouse building, is to remain there. In discussions with the applicant as to what would happen with their landscaping plans and the reorganizing of landscaping, in addition of more landscaping on the site, it was discussed adding some landscaping in front of that building, but we also discussed the potential of some type of mural or acknowledgement of the special relationship between the city of Riviera Beach and Florida Power and Light. As you all know, they have several very large facilities within our city. They were supportive of that suggestion from our department, and they submitted the mural design that's before you on this slide. It states the City of Riviera Beach, FPL Evolution Hub, Clean Energy on the Go. The slide before you now shows the proposed landscape plan for the changes to this property and its site plan. It shows the proposed landscaping next to the warehouse building, as was indicated on the previous slide. And finally, the recommendations from staff. Staff is supportive of the site plan, and we recommend approval with the following conditions. One, the standard 2-year landscaping performance bond for 110% of the value of the landscaping and irrigation be provided to the city before certificate of occupancy. Construction and landscaping improvements must be initiated within 18 months of the effective date of this resolution, or it will be considered null and void. 3, City Council authorizes staff to approve future amendments to this site plan administratively, so long as the site plan does not deviate greater than 5% from the originally approved site plan. Number 4, this development must receive final certificate of occupancy from the city for all buildings approved within 5 years of the approval of this resolution, or this resolution will be deemed null and void and they will need to start over. Number 5, all future advertising must state that the development is located within the city of Riviera Beach. Number 6, once approved, this resolution shall supersede any previous site plan approvals or resolutions associated with this property. And 7, applicant shall install a mural on Building B, north elevation, highlighting the city's partnership with FPL, written and graphic representation, and must be safely illuminated, directly or indirectly, in a manner that does not create any nuisance or hazard from glare to surrounding properties and or traffic. Content shall be as approved by City Council and installed prior to issuance of a certificate of completion. That includes staff's presentation on this.
Thank you, Mr. Sermons. Are there any questions from the board?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Lawson, and then Councilwoman Botel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sermons, for the work on this. I've actually met with the team and very excited for some of the efforts that have gone into making sure this is a great project. I'm appreciative of the mural that they're going to put up to showcase the arts and not just have a blank canvas there. So that's also going to showcase some of the beautification of our community. So thank you for the work on this.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Botel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank FP&L and all of the folks there, especially Sophia, and for moving towards renewable energy, and especially in such a large way. And also thank you for the electric vehicle chargers. We appreciate that very much.
Any other questions from the board in regards to this project? Madam Clerk.
Councilperson Botel.
Yes.
Councilperson Lawson.
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy.
Yes.
Pro Tem Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Chair Lanier.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item.
Item number 11, resolution number 45-21, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving plat application from AJP MLP Family Limited Partnership to combine 3 contiguous lots of record into 2 lots totaling approximately 4.43 acres in land area for the real properties located immediately east of North Military Trail and identified by parcel control numbers 5642, 42, 36, 20, 000, 0010, 5642, 42, 36, 20, 000, 0020, and 5642, 36, 40, 000, 0020, and providing for an effective date. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do have a public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
I move to approve Resolution 45-21.
Second.
Second.
Public comments, please.
Lloyd Brown. Madam Chair, members of the board, that concludes public comment.
Thank you. Mr. Sherman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The image before you highlights the boundaries of the property in red. The city's municipal boundaries are highlighted in blue. All right, the slide before you is zoomed in so you can more clearly see the boundaries of the property in question for this plat item. The land use is commercial, the zoning is general commercial, and it is on our principal arterial design standards overlay zone. The lot size is 4.43 acres. This is the proposed development of this site. The next item on the agenda is for the associated site plan for this plat. The existing use is vacant, and the proposed use is retail with outdoor merchandise display. 90 parking spaces are proposed, and the access would be 2 separate access points along Military Trail. They are indicated by the arrows before you. The applicant is requesting a plat approval to replat the existing 3 contiguous lots into 2 lots in conjunction with the request for a site plan approval SP 20-15 to build a 19,097 square foot building for Tractor Supply Company with outdoor storage, display, and sales of merchandise and parking. Before you is the configuration of the plat for the property in question. And staff's recommendation is to approve this plat application PA 20-06 from AGP MLP Family Limited Partnership to combine the 3 contiguous lots of record into 2 lots totaling approximately 4.43 acres in land area for the real properties located immediately east on North Military Trail, identified by the parcel control numbers that were already read into the record. That concludes staff's presentation on this item.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman McCoy.
So this is, we have the, I'm sorry, Miller Anderson, did you have something for me?
No, sir.
Oh, I thought you called me. So tell me about the conditions, the specific conditions that were added. Tell me how we arrived at that. I think there was something on the last page.
Correct. The conditions added were for the next agenda item, the site plan resolution for this property.
Oh, this is just a replay. Okay, all right.
Yes.
Oh, I waive.
Absolutely. And I failed to mention that the representative for the applicant is present this evening and prepared to present and or answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the board in regards to this? Or would you like to hear the presentation?
Well, I was hoping that if there is will we have another presentation for the site plan?
That's correct.
Okay, I'll wait for the site plan.
All right, very good. No questions? Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lawson?
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy?
Yes.
Councilperson Botel?
Yes.
Pro Tem Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item, please.
Resolution number 4621, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving site plan application from AJP MLP Family Limited Partnership to construct an approximately 19,097 square foot building for retail use with limited outdoor display on an approximate 4.43 acre parcel of land located immediately east on North Military Trail and identified by parcel control numbers 5642423620 0000010 5642423620 0000020 and 5642423640 0000020, providing for conditions of approval and providing an effective date. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Make a motion to
Resolution
approve.
4621.
Can we get a motion? Thank you. Mr. Sherman?
Sorry.
Yes, Madam Chair. On the screen before you, you can see the boundaries of this property, the same as on the previous agenda item for the associated plat for this property. It is located on North Military Trail. Again, a zoomed in photo of the boundaries of the property. Again, it is, the future land use is commercial. The zoning is general commercial, and it is on our principal arterial design standards overlay zone. The property size is 4.43 acres. Before you, again, is the site plan for this property. The existing use is vacant, and the proposed use is retail with outdoor merchandise display. The proposed building is 19,097 square feet for the main building, and an outdoor display area of 21,108 feet. I will pause to note that the outdoor display areas on this site plan are called out on the document, although it's small right now, but it is called out on the document, and the conditions of this resolution do limit the outdoor display areas strictly to what's described on this document, and any proposed changes would have to come back to the city for any proposed expansion of the outdoor display areas. 90 parking spaces are proposed on the site plan, meeting the city ordinances related to parking, and there are 2 access points along Military Trail for the development. Before you now are the proposed elevations of the property, starting with the south elevation at the top, the west elevation, the east elevation, and then at the bottom, the north elevation of the property. They do meet the corridor overlay standards. Before you now is the proposed landscape plan of the property and staff recommendations. City staff recommends approval with the following condition. A 2-year landscaping performance bond for 110% of the value of the landscaping and irrigation to be provided before certificate of occupancy. 2, construction and landscaping improvements must be initiated within 18 months of the effective date of this resolution, or it will be considered null and void. 3, the city council authorizes staff to approve future amendments to the site plan administratively, so long as the site plan does not deviate greater than 5% from the originally approved site plan. 4, this development must receive final certificate of occupancy from the city for all buildings approved within 5 years of the approval of the adopting resolution, or the adopting resolution shall be considered null and void. 5, all future advertising must state that the development is located within the city of Riviera Beach. 6, once approved, this resolution shall supersede any previous site plan approval resolutions associated with this property, causing the previous site plan approval resolutions to be null and void. 7, the proposed 30 feet cross-access easement must be filed with the Palm Beach County Clerk, and a copy of the recorded easement must be provided to the City Development Services Department and Public Works prior to the issuance of a building permit. Number 8, the limit of outdoor storage and display shall be shown on plans titled Site Plan Tractor Supply Company, Sheet SP1, and the products shall not impede or restrict vehicular or pedestrian circulation, and any expansion of outside storage or display shall require a site plan modification. And 9, whereas the applicant Tractor Supply Company and their agent Hicks Snedeker Company have expressed a commitment to hire locally as possible for both construction jobs and subcontracting jobs for the construction phase, as well as long-term employment for the operation, they shall advertise opportunities by participating in local job fairs and advertising opportunities within the city of Riviera Beach. The developer shall provide a report to the Development Services Department at 6 months post certificate of occupancy, documenting the outreach efforts to acquire local employees, number of local employees hired subject to employment and privacy laws, and the percentage of construction costs expended with subcontractors broken down by city. And that concludes the staff presentation, and the applicant is present and prepared to present.
Any questions from the board?
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Mr. McCoy, and then you, Dr. Patel.
Thank you.
Mr. Sermons, I'm trying to see from the site plan where the 30-foot easement is called out. Would you be able to, you got a pointer?
I don't believe there's a pointer on this device that I have.
I think I see something just off of Military Trail.
It is at the northern part of the property, but I'm sure the applicant can better describe the location and extent of it as well.
And so, help me understand, so there's a couple things moving around on this. So right under where the north arrows are, it says property FPL easement. Is this easement to be deeded to FPL, or is it supposed to be an easement just recorded for the purposes of the official records, or is it supposed to be deeded to the city?
No, it would not be deeded to the city, but if you would expound on the nature of the easement to be granted.
Good evening, Hope Calhoun, land use attorney for the agent. I'm here tonight with my client representative as well as the engineer. So if I mess up on this easement answer, the engineer would quickly jump up and correct me. But with regard to the easement and then specifically condition number 7, the easement, yes, Commissioner, is located at the north end of the development. I can't point, but it's sort of, if you see the red arrows at the top of the screen, there's an easement on the right side of the screen related to it. The purpose of that easement will be to provide access to the Rapids Water Park. They own that property to the east. We need to record that easement along with DOT. So we're actually asking, I'm kind of asking as I answer your question, but one slight modification to this condition number 7 related to this easement is where it reads that we have to do this prior to building permit. We just like to change that to certificate of occupancy. Again, we have to deal with the Florida Department of Transportation, so we're just concerned that we might get slowed down a little bit there. Did I answer your question about the easement location?
I have another question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. McCoy.
So I just want to find out about the condition that was, I guess, added late. So specifically those conditions in number 9 regarding the, the employment and privacy laws for the outreach of local employees.
The additional language there was specifically requested by the applicant. It was discussed with Development Services staff and City Legal, and there were no objections, but it was inserted at the request of the applicant. So they may be able to expound on exactly why they want that.
So on a more broader question, I'm saying, so was this just a gesture of good faith by Tractor Supply Company? Or was this something that, was offered up by staff?
For that condition?
For the local preference on subs and employment.
Correct. That item emerged from discussions with staff, and one of the questions we have begun asking large companies as they come into the city is what their hiring practices are, and do they have any initiatives to hire locally. And their response, they did commit to hiring locally. The language staff created to add some more specificity to how we track large employers when they come in the city and say they will make an effort to hire locally. We've had similar language on previous resolutions. This language is a reflection of us trying to be more specific and following up with them 6 months after occupancy to see what those efforts were, so we can make that available public knowledge to track whether they came through on that commitment.
Okay, well, I really like it. I'm just curious to find out how we got there, but I appreciate that staff did have that conversation, and I mean, you explained it very well, and I like to see that. I mean, obviously we can't force, but certainly I appreciate their willingness to come to the community and, show their real commitment and involvement in offering up that. So thank you, Mr. Simmons and Tractor Supply Company.
And thank you. Dr. Botel?
Thank you. My comment was also about the jobs. I really appreciate that insertion of that language, and I appreciate Tractor Supply being willing to do that. However, I would like to know if Tractor Supply could provide us with a list of the jobs and the job descriptions so that we can prepare workers in the city if they don't have the right qualifications in advance of the hiring or the job fairs. And we'd also be happy to assist with job fairs if necessary, but it would be really, really critical for us to have job descriptions so that in advance we could get people ready to have those jobs.
Yes, respond.
Yes, we are willing to do that to the extent that we can, assuming we have everything prepared ahead of time. Yes, we're happy to send it over to the appropriate person
Great.
at the city.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilman Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And also, Mr. Sermons, again, thank you for working with staff and getting to these businesses that are coming into our city and making sure that they're meeting the commitments that we as a DIAS have requested. Hiring locally is something that we've been beating into our staff and also letting the community and business sector know this is what we want. And they're hearing our cries. And thank you, Ms. Calhoun and your team, for actually addressing those and actually listening to some of our concerns and the conversations that we've had in reference to bringing this. So thank you for the business opportunity for our city. I'll be supporting this item and continuing to support the business that comes to our city. Mr. Sermons, question in regards to the advertisement and marketing as addressed to the city of Riviera Beach. What consequences do we have if that's not addressed when it comes to promotional tools, marketing, or advertisement of the address or usage of the city of Riviera Beach?
Yes, I believe there's, let me find that condition number. Okay, it says fees and penalties according to City Code Section 31-554. So we do have provisions in code to levy penalties if that is not adhered to. I haven't recently read that section, but I do want to note that it is in existing ordinance.
Okay. And it just comes up because it's funny because just the other day I noticed that the Nissan dealership just recently rebranded themselves, and my hopes were that they would be, Riviera Beach Nissan, but they've changed their name from West Palm Beach Nissan to I-95 Nissan. So these are some of the concerns that I want to make sure that every business, and that's why I'm appreciative of this business accepting the requirements of addressing and promoting our city, because any business that's actually paying tax or has land in our municipality, I want to make sure they reference the beautiful city of Riviera Beach and not another municipality or a structure that doesn't relate to our city. So I appreciate that as well. Do we happen to have, and this may be a Ms. Pimsel question, but do we happen to have a list of subs ready for these major developers that we actually use? I know that we have a kind of a sheltered market structure, but I know that these developers, these businesses are coming into our city. Do we have something that we can provide to these developers that are looking for local participation?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Pimsel. You want to come to the front, please?
Madam Chair, if I may, to that, we can provide a list of all the vendors we have, but we can't provide a list of select vendors. But yes, we can provide that to any entity, and they can grab those names off the list that are considered qualified vendors in the city of Riviera Beach.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Does that list consist of all the vendors that we work with or our local vendors?
All the vendors that are considered well, we have probably a list that has all the vendors, and then we may have another list that specifies our local vendors. So if the list is already created, we can provide them the list that we do have, and then they can look at the contractors.
And I guess that's the question, because that's counterproductive to our point of wanting to just work with local. So just giving them the full list is not going to address the concerns of that local participation. So I want to make sure that we're clear with what we're legally allowed to do in providing that list. And also structure it to where local participation is preference to any of these businesses that we can give out. So I'm not sure how that step would go about, but maybe that's a Miss Wynn or someone that could address that.
Mr. Evans?
We can look into it. I'm not really sure of the answer to that question.
Okay. So that list that we do have the vendors that we can provide to these organizations, these businesses that come in that are asking to use, and with this requirement or that we've put into, I would love for that opportunity to give them a list of our local vendors that we have, and then also reaching out to some more local vendors to get them registered with the city to just build that relationship and hire from within. Thank you, Mr. Evans.
No problem, Madam Chair. We can provide a list of our MBE, WMB, those types of things, so we can break the list down like that, because that's categories that we probably have that. So we'll just provide those different lists to to them, and then they can choose off of that particular list.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Thank you, Mr. Sermons. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Sermons and the developer? None being heard, Madam Clerk.
If I'm sorry, just if I may, I apologize.
Sure.
I just wanted to clarify that revision or modification to condition number 7, and that's just changing to the issuance, prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy as opposed to prior to the issuance of building permit.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may respond.
Yes, go ahead.
This was discussed with staff in their concern about being able to obtain that easement from the DOT before building permit issuance. So we are not opposed to holding that requirement to being done before certificate of occupancy and allowing that condition to be amended as such.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the maker of the motion was Councilperson Lawson, seconded by Councilperson Miller Anderson. I need to know if you all are amenable to the requested change in the ordinance and resolution.
Board?
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Councilperson McCoy?
Yes.
Councilperson Botel?
Yes.
Councilperson Lawson?
Yes.
Pro Tem Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for
very
both
much for
items.
your presentation, Mr. Sermons, Mrs. Calhoun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is under discussion and deliberation, number 14.
Presentation on pre-disparity study project update. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have any public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
Thank you. Mrs. Pemsel? Mr. Evans, you want to introduce this item, please?
Certainly. Madam Chair and members of the board, staff is bringing before you an update on the disparity study and the progress that staff is making, as well as a tentative timeline with regards to some of the policies that we would like for the board to consider and adopt in preparation of the completion of the disparity study. And at this time, our Director of Procurement, Ms. Althea Pinsel, will provide the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Pemsel.
Good evening, Chair Lanier, Pro Tem, Council, City Administration. My name is Althea Pemsel, Procurement Director for the record. Thank you again for allowing me to provide this update for pre-disparity studies. On December 16, 2020, a presentation was done to Council that included our consultants from MGT Consulting, from Franklin Lee, the attorney from Tidings, and also from B2G Now. And the goal was to discuss the disparity study process itself, the steps that are involved in a disparity study. And if you recall at that meeting, we discussed the people, the financial resources involved, and we also discussed the tasks that are required in order to accomplish initially some pre-disparity study activities to get us to an actual pre-disparity study solicitation process. The consensus was that 3 years worth of data would be sufficient to conduct a disparity study, and that in the meantime, procurement would update their procurement code and implement tracking software with B2G Now and begin the collection process. In a nutshell, the status is as follows. We have reviewed the tasks for Mr. Lee, and during the meeting of the presentation, we talked about a race and gender neutral ordinance. So we will be bringing in June a contract in coordination with Ms. Nguyen for Mr. Lee, since it exceeds the manager's authority, in order to be able to draft that ordinance. Secondly, we will be bringing the two ordinances that were brought to you earlier, the anti-discrimination and the cone of silence. Our goal will be to bring the procurement code later in the summer. It will not have the SBE, MBE portion, of course, because we will not be prepared as the study would not have been completed by that time. To facilitate the remaining portions, we are working very closely with B2G now. It is a project because we are implementing software and trying to get two systems to work together. So we have attached the schedule. We're about a week or two off the schedule, but we anticipate that being able to catch up after they have a week off where they're doing the public training that they do for all of their customers, and that would be B2G now. Is there any questions?
Board?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you for the update, Ms. Pimsel. Mr. Evans, if we could have bi-monthly updates just to kind of stay abreast on what's going on with the disparity study. I think that this just needs to become a priority, because what we're seeing is a lot of businesses and vendors are seeing the importance of local, minority, SBE, WMBE businesses and participating, but we don't have a specific requirement. They're just kind of using what we've put out as an expectation. But businesses are not required to come here, and we're also not required to vote on accepting it. But at the same time, I would love us to complete the study as quickly as possible. So just getting these bi-monthly, every 2 to 3 months, getting it on the agenda just to be abreast and aware of what's going on, keep the community aware, and keep the dais up to date on it.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Absolutely, and Ms. Pimsel is queued up and in the hopper to come back and provide the board with updates as we hit major milestones. So you will see updates from staff on a more frequent basis as we hit milestones associated with the project.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
And also, I just wanted to publicly thank you, Ms. Pimsel, because from the beginning, I've just kind of tried to drill this into you and staff to let us know this is the expectation of myself and the dais, and you've gone and far exceeded the expectation. So I know it was just kind of a rocky start at the beginning, but I just want to thank you because you've brought the efforts. Every project that's come before us has had that expectation, and it's exceeded the expectations of local minority participation, and you're continuing to work on bringing this to the table. So this is something that's not just a staple for us today, but for generations to come. So thank you, Ms. Pimsel. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And Mr. Evans, thank you, because you actually implemented it and made sure it got done for us. So thank you so much, and thank you for the update on the study. I'm looking forward to completing it.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Next item.
Item number 15, are in public places, discussion and deliberation. Madam Chair, members of the board, we do not have any public comment on this item. The acceptance of public comment on this item is now closed.
Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair and members of the board, this item is at the board's request to provide an update on the art in public places. I've asked for the planning or the development services director, Mr. Clarence Sermons, to make this presentation. We have looked at what other agencies are doing, because when we did have the conversation with the board, we did have the discussion about the possibility of incorporating a fee component, but that wasn't something that the board wanted to institute at this particular moment. So we've looked at some other mechanisms that we think the board would see favorable, especially when we look at our own municipal projects. And so Director Sermons can provide more detail about staff's approach.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we go on, Mr. Evans, I don't recollect the board making a decision about not wanting a fee. Can you please refresh my memory about when we decided that?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
We did have the conversation with the board about a fee that would be collected as a result of the permitting process, and based on the conversations and the dialogue and the review after staff reviewed the minutes, it wasn't something that was favorably considered by the board to create another fee that would be absorbed by the developer or the business entity. And so from that point, staff then went and looked at other programs and other solutions to be able to try to move forward with this particular initiative. Now, we can certainly circle back and have subsequent conversations with the board as part of the budget process, and if that's something that we want to look at, and I do think we have it queued up to look at when we start discussing impact fees as a future funding mechanism, but it wasn't favorable when we did bring that particular item to the board for consideration when we were looking to first start the program.
Okay, I just don't remember having rejected that as an idea. And I wonder if we, as you do your investigations, could you please take a look at other municipalities and whether or not they have an impact fee of sorts that would provide for public art? Because I personally do think that's something that we should consider.
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
Ice?
Madam Chair, just quickly to address that.
Yes, go ahead.
And actually, I agree with Councilwoman Botel. Just reviewing that meeting after having the agenda review and looking at the memo, I know that there wasn't a consensus in reference to not charging a fee for the Arts in Public Places program. And even just this last proposal that came down the pipeline had a over 1% fee for programming. That was with the ITN, and they actually presented that without it even being implemented in the process. So I think that it's something that developers are seeing that's a necessity. I don't see this as a pushback. I remember, and I actually watched the meeting, I know my colleague, Councilman McCoy, had some concerns with double taxation and additional fees on businesses and may discourage businesses, but I don't believe there was a consensus in the programming that, or the different municipalities, as Councilwoman Botel stated, they are charging actual fees to developers coming in to assist with not just murals, not just arts, but also programming. And we saw tonight that FP&L is actually implementing a mural onto their design, which would also fall under the parameters of this quote-unquote fee. So I would actually want to have that discussion tonight, Mr. Evans, in reference to implementing and looking at the processes of a fee or some type of charge to our developers that can come in, 0.5% or 1%, that could actually go towards this programming that can kind of be held within whichever department we determine that you think would be a good oversight for it. And then also you did address the impact fees as well, and I wanted to address that in my comments later, but I definitely think it's time for us to look at and update those impact fees and have that discussion as well.
Mr. Evans, hold that thought until we get this presentation, this update from Mr. Sermons. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Sermons.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Clarence Sermons, Director of Development Services. I would like to do a quick recap of some of the main components of successful programs that were mentioned before, and then provide some updates on what has transpired since the last time we had this conversation before Council. So in our research, we researched multiple municipalities in the county that have existing art in public places programs, and looked at the similar components of them that were commonalities between them. And we provided some recaps of those, and we saw that all of them have these four components, some type of master plan that sets out what the program will look like for that municipality. They have some type of dedicated staff employed with the city to facilitate the program. They all have some type of advisory board or body that oversees the program, and then they have some type of established funding, and there are various ways that they met that kind of component that's necessary. When we previously had this conversation before the council, a lot of the conversation centered on how we would pay for it, of course, and the concept of having a art impact fee, so to speak, versus other types of incentivized fees that the developer can voluntarily pay into if they can get something out of it. So kind of like a carrot program. You get additional density if you provide some type of public art or contribute to the public art program of the city. In exchange for that, you can get additional densities. We do have that type of public benefit program that's already written into our code as it relates to public spaces, but public art could be something that could be added to that portion of the code, and maybe you get an additional level of density if you do both or one, and that's a way that the code can be changed to allow for public art to be included on an optional basis for the projects that it makes sense and the developer wants to participate, versus an art impact fee that would be across the board to any project that comes through the city. So that was the main funding component that we were grappling with. And of course, there are opportunities for applying for grants, the contribution from city funds in the way of our capital improvement projects. We mentioned us setting the example of what we want development to look like in the city. So whenever we develop something, especially with our Reimagine Riviera Beach program coming down the pipeline, that if we want to inspire art around the city, that we do it with our own projects, and that we commit a portion of the project budgets for those to be public art or have some type of public space included in them. So that was one of the main portions of the conversations that we've had previously. Since then, staff has spoken in more detail with persons in programs around the county, but also artisans around the county that have worked with municipalities to create their boards. And in these conversations, it's expanded what we are visualizing our program to be, and it's shown us that we have a unique opportunity in the city of Riviera Beach because of the demographics of our city and who we serve. And often persons think of, sculptures and murals when it comes to public art, but they can also be the cultural arts. They can be the performing arts. They could be celebrating the art in schools, in our public spaces, in our city buildings and things of that nature. And it just highlighted that some of those more in-depth conversations have not taken place yet about what the vision for the City of Riviera Beach Art in Public Places program can be. So in terms of next steps, we think it's very important to develop that master plan, but to develop that master plan, we believe that we need to establish an advisory board to guide this program and include well-known artisans around the county, within the city, outside of the city, that have experience with these programs, as well as staff and other persons intimately familiar with the city, to have those conversations, have public discussions, and develop what the vision for the Art in Public Places programs can be for the city. And we use that vision to inform a master plan that we would could potentially have developed by a consultant and likely need expertise in that area, but possibly a lot of the work of that could be done by department staff as well, some combination of the two. In our research, we have found that the median price for a plan to be developed is probably somewhere around $25,000. It could greatly exceed that depending on how much into the weeds we would want a consultant to go. But we do identify that as a very important step to moving our program forward here. So in terms of next steps, Development Services, if it pleases the council, would bring forth a resolution in front of this board with the following 4 components. The first would be the allocation of 1.5% of the cost of capital projects to be dedicated to art in public places. And that could be installation of public art at our future new city hall building, or that 1.5% could be contributed to that pot of money to fund the city's Art in Public Places program. But 1.5% of the cost of capital projects go towards art in public places. 2, that this resolution include a directive to Development Services to amend the Code of Ordinances to include a provision of public art funding for public art as a public benefit. As I mentioned before, expanding the public benefit additional densities portion of our code to include public art so developers can voluntarily participate and contribute to the city. But again, based on this conversation, we could change that to it being an across-the-board art impact fee for a flat rate on any project. That's, again, something we would need direction on. The third component of the resolution would be a directive to Development Services to form an advisory working group of local experts in the art and public arts programs to assist with the development of a vision for the city that will result in an art and public places master plan. And then finally, the fourth, a directive to Development Services to publish a RFQ for the development of an art and public places master plan, and necessary allocations to create that. And again, that portion wouldn't come until the time that we have a vision to really direct what that master plan would look like. So that's what we proposed based on our research to be included in a resolution that we would subsequently bring before this board for consideration.
Madam Chair?
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Councilman Lawson.
Thank you. Mr. Sermons, you mentioned 1.5% of the projects. Is there a cap on minimum project amount? Because I don't want it to be on every project that comes to the table. I would actually prefer bigger projects, maybe capped at 300, 400,000. What was the amount that you stated?
I put a percentage, 1.5, but a cap certainly makes sense, and that's something we could include in there if it's the pleasure of the board.
Because if the project's coming to the table, I wouldn't want it to charge that fee on every business vendor, every rehab that comes in, every property, everything that comes to the table. More so the businesses that are going to be at a certain level of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 and over would be contributing to this arts impact fee.
If I may,
yes, go ahead, respond.
Point of clarification: the 1.5% is proposed for city capital projects. Are you referring to a 1.5 art impact fee on private projects?
Impact fee on private. I'm sorry. I thought we had clarity on that, but I realized that we're talking about the city projects.
Okay.
So for the developer projects that come before the table, I guess we as a council just need to give clarification if we want to instill an impact fee on development projects that come, because we're trying to get the funding for this program, and we have to have a consensus from the council as to where the funding needs to come from. That's the first thing. And then the 1.5 you're proposing is on municipal projects?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I have a few more, but I'll table those for a minute.
Very good. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman McCoy.
Thank you. So we're out for impact fee study right now, right, Mr. Evans?
That is correct, Councilman.
But Ms. Nguyen and also Mr. Evans, as well as members, so something just happened in the legislature about a rewrite of how we can levy impact fees. And quite frankly, even prior to this new legislation, my understanding of impact fees have to be solely for, so we can't levy an additional impact fee for the purpose of art. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Councilman McCoy is right. There is some activity, and there's actually some action that the legislature did with regards to impact fees, and we're trying to unpackage that at this particular moment. We would look to create not necessarily an impact fee, but a art surcharge, or it would be something different, but we are doing an impact fee analysis because to levy an impact fee, it has to be associated with the impact that that development makes. And art is something separate and apart. It is not something associated that you can argue that this development caused for the need for additional infrastructure, or police officers, or firefighters, or parks and recs. So it would be something separate and apart. Most municipalities have a charge of 1 to 1.5% from what we've been able to see, a fee associated with art in public places. What we're also thinking about doing with our municipal projects is that, for instance, Fire Station 88, if we have, and if our intent is to move forward with a public art component, but you're roughly looking at about $150,000 to $175,000 of some type of public art that would be incorporated in the design of the facility. Now, in the event that there's capital left over, that would be in an account that committee that the board, we're looking for the board to appoint, will then look for art projects within the district or within the area to invest that capital. So there would be seed money that would be able to be put into that that account to grow. And similar to that of your site plans, there can be a situation where a condition is if someone's not going to incorporate public art into their facilities, that they, in lieu of, contribute some monies into that fund for public art throughout the city. So there's other ways to find it, but impact fees is under a lot of scrutiny from the legislature, and we're probably going to see significant modifications to the way in which impact fees are levied throughout the state.
Follow.
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm happy to say that I support the legislature stepping in and doing things just like what was almost offered by Councilperson Lawson. We can't just tax people. You know, since I was sitting here jotting down notes on the type of fees and taxes that we've levied just since being on this board, and you know, as a body, and not saying anyone in particular, but you know, we've had discussions about raising impact fees, water rates. Obviously, the millage rate has been raised every single year. We're talking about a fire assessment, implementing, which I do agree with, actually accepting parking revenues from parking fees. But we have to remember, and even, wait, hold on, let me back up. Even tonight, there was an item to assess 35% franchise fee, which ultimately gets passed down to the end users, which are everybody that's in this community. And we got to understand that a developer is not going to come here and get nickeled and dimed every time you turn around. And when that does happen, the businesses pay, the residents pay. So, I mean, I don't even want to start this discussion about arts, and this is my position, because we haven't even established buildings and facilities that are accommodating to our workforce currently. So to suggest that we need to work on the aesthetics of the community, I think the priorities have to first be established as to what we're doing. And I definitely don't want a mandatory contribution. That just seems like another tax, and that's exactly why the legislature stepped in to stop local governments, similar to how they preempted the regulation of firearms and concealed weapons, that you don't have a hodgepodge, or every time you turn around somebody wants to then tax the local Joe or the local business. But like, literally, we have to figure out what's a priority. And quite frankly, I don't think art in public places is one of them, because we have failing infrastructure. We have buildings that's in disarray. I mean, we have just talked about code enforcement. I think we need to remedy the problems that exist within the community before we go all far out on trying to, you know, make this whole aesthetic appearance in art, and then do it at the tune of taxing businesses that want to come into this community, because they're going to pass those costs right on to the customers and to the people that's in this community. So I don't support it. Now, I will say having a committee to have that discussion is fine, but a 1.5% of capital projects is more money that's going out of needed infrastructure repairs that I don't believe that we're in position as an organization to do. And that is built off of the very fundamentals that we have to get our priorities right as to what's important and where we're going. Not 5 years, but in the immediate, year and a half.
Thank you, sir, for those comments. Yes, go ahead, Councilman Lawson.
Just to follow up and respond to Councilman McCoy, legislator puts parameters in place in regards to restricting increases for impact fees at a 50% rate over a 4-year period. That's the caps that they put in, and that's actually what was just passed. So they are putting limitations on the increases, but realizing that we haven't had a rate increase or addressed our impact fees since 2005. Also understanding that we have not had any development in our community since I think I've been a kid. So my concern is that if we don't start to address some of the financial needs that we have and working with our community, what I specifically stated is that we have a parameter, or we have a set limit on how much we're actually charging the businesses that are coming in, so that we're not taxing the small business owners, but the major corporations that are coming to make multi-million dollars here. We have Fortune 500 companies that are actually being undertaxed and have not actually committed to improving the quality of life and also the beautification of our community. Second point, I also want to bring clarity that I truly believe arts in public places is going to impact our community tremendously. I look at communities like Wynwood area. I look at what's been done over there and what they have done for that community, for that city, raising the tax rate, raising their millage rate, raising their revenue for that community and lowering the actual millage rate for our residents just because of the beautification of that downtown area. So a few things that can be done, and that's just one facility, one municipality. A few things that we have to address is a beautification and also the development of our community. We have to address some of the intensities and densities on our corridors and also focus on how we're going to actually develop this community effectively and efficiently. Development is coming. So now we have to be a part of it and make sure that we're beautifying the community at the same time. The arts program, and I want you to be clear, is not just about murals on walls. It's about beautifying businesses, it's about investing into infrastructure, and it's making sure that we attract additional businesses with the beautification. Programming and teaching and education and school programs is also going to be a part of the Arts in Public Places program that I want staff to develop with the different municipalities that myself and my legislative aide actually did research throughout the country that are actually implemented in areas that have increased the quality of their community.
Thank you so much, Councilman Lawson. Are there any other questions for Mr. Sermons in this presentation. I know that we will not turn this into a debate. This is a discussion. This has to come back before us probably several times before we settle on how we're going to move forward with it. So thank you for your presentation, Mr. Sermons, and
Is that a question of, did we have?
I think there's.
I mean, you asked us, did we have questions?
Confusing, yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. McCoy.
I don't have it. I'm gonna let. I mean, you.
We're gonna. This is not a debate. This is a discussion. I think that we've had enough conversation about how we're going to move forward with this, and I know that this is very near and dear to your heart, Mr. Lawson, and we're going to ensure that we have all of the facets and all of the individuals sitting up here to weigh in on this and to be able to come back with something that we can all agree on.
Mm-hmm. I know that we just got to give clarity for staff to know how we're going to actually be funding this program. So there was not clarity from the last time, so I want to make sure that we have a consensus or we even take a vote so that there's clarity moving forward so they know how to actually present this. So I don't want to continue to have a debate.
What I want to happen is this, that when we talk about impact fees or we talk about funding, we have to have several options. And I think that that's what they can bring back to us, that we know that it has to be funded, that the money has to come from somewhere. So if you can bring us back, Mr. Sermons, a couple of options for us to look at for this funding piece and how this would work. Now, as I said before, we understand that the money has to come from somewhere, and certainly not from the city. So we want you to look at options to be able to move forward with this project. Mr. Evans, you want to weigh in on how we will look at different options for this?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may. The item that's before you this evening is to look at, there's a couple of questions that Director Sermons would like clarity from the board, but the 1.5% that we've talked, that's on municipal projects. We never contemplated or brought the item with the intention that that same fee would be what the business community would end up seeing in whatever mechanism that we move forward with. And so staff is requesting, is there desire from the board to have that as a component of our municipal projects to say, 1.5% is set aside for art in public places. And it's not necessarily a sculpture or painting or a mural like Councilperson Lawson said. It is an architectural feature that we add to the building that adds a sense of place in the lobby area. And so those are things that are just common in most construction of municipal facilities as you're looking at space making. So we wanted to see if the board wanted to have a policy whereby as we look to do projects throughout the city that we're thinking with that mindset to say we're going to incorporate 1.5% of the project is going to have some type of art element associated when it's a municipal project for us to lead by example. And so that's the funding component. That's exclusively to city projects, nothing to do with the private sector, as we will bring you back some other operations and what other entities are doing and how they're looking to fund that and getting participation from the private sector, whether it's a fee or it's donation base or in lieu of, we can bring that all back, but this was specifically to municipal projects.
Thank you. So what do you want from us, Mr. Sermons, right now?
So we are inclined to move forward with those 4 components that I mentioned earlier to develop them into language for a resolution to bring before this body for a vote. And so 1.5 on city projects for us to include some type of option for developers to pay into an art program through incentives in our land development code, a directive to develop a committee or an advisory board for the program for the city, and a directive to issue when the time is appropriate an RFQ for art in public places master plan. If those are all at least satisfactory items for a vote, we can bring that resolution to you in the near future.
As the board, go ahead, Councilman.
So my question regarding the capital projects and the 1.5%, I mean, I certainly understand and can appreciate trying to identify the funds for it and going that route, but I mean, how much money are we talking for capital projects, number one, and then, obviously the 1.5% of that. it just feels like for me, we're just throwing a number out there, and I don't really know how much we're talking about. Like, what is do we know our total of our capital projects that we're actually gonna do already for this coming up? Or is this something that needs to be discussed during budget time?
Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair, if I may, so as of, we do have, in our capital improvements plan, we do have the amount that we anticipate spending for capital projects. So as part of the program budget, we would develop a cost associated with what we think the entire capital expenses, and as part of the program budget, X amount of dollars is going to be set aside. So it's not something that's going to add an additional 1.5% to the overall construction cost. It's going to be incorporated in the overall construction cost. 1.5% is going to be set aside for, capital, public art as it relates to the facilities. So,
well, I understand it's not going to add to it, but it will be taking away from any construction costs. And knowing that, right now we're going through a phase where construction materials are going up. So I know we talked about doing certain things that cost certain amounts, but have we looked to see, are we going to have any deficits? Are we going to have any, we've had COVID. We have a number of things that have happened since we've done our budgets. If you don't stop. And so I'm just trying to figure out, are we putting the cart before the horse at this point?
Mr. Evans?
So as it relates to the existing capital projects now that we have on the books, we anticipated that this would be part of the future projects. So with Fire Station 88 and then hopefully Fire Station 86, and even with the library, there is some art elements that are associated. So we're already planning that into projects. As we go into the budget, the cost for capital and our capital projects, we're seeing, of course, construction material go up. Over the last year, it's probably gone up anywhere between 15 to 29%, depending on what the materials are, and that's associated with some of the tariffs. So we are seeing some of the capital costs go up associated with projects, and we can look as we go through the different budgets, we can see what projects are projects where, for instance, a lot of communities, $100 million project, if you're taking $1.5 million, that's a lot of money that's associated with it. So at some communities, they have a situation where it's 1.5% up to, you hit like a $250,000 threshold, and that's the max that can be set aside for public art projects. Because if you have a $100 million project, you're talking about a substantial amount of capital that's utilized for public art, and then you're deviating from what can be spent on other things. And so we can actually put in those types of parameters that don't allow for it to see a situation where you have $1 million that's set aside for public art, where it hits a certain threshold and a cap, and then that's it.
Okay, so do we need to establish that cap tonight, or is that something we can probably?
We're going to come back with a resolution. So at the next meeting, we can actually have some language that the board can look at, option 1, option 2, option 3 as it relates to the resolution. And then the board can say, hey, this is the threshold. And there's also communities that put in that the project has to be at least $1 million plus or $2 million plus. So your smaller capital projects, right, sidewalks and those types of things, you're not expending money. You're really addressing those issues. So we'll look at a benchmark, and then we'll also look at a threshold to make sure that we don't have a situation where you're putting aside millions of dollars associated with public art, and then bring that back to the board as part of the resolution. And I'll share with the board some of the languages that we're working with, so you have it in advance of the meeting.
Okay, as long as some of that comes back along with the resolution, because I don't want to have to just vote no because I didn't have
Right.
options.
I agree, and thankfully we can have something back to us about our next meeting so that we can have an understanding, and not at the next meeting, but in terms of before the next meeting, having some information about how we're going to move forward with this.
Sir.
All right, very good. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
We will move on now to the discussion by the city manager, please.
Yes, Madam Chair. First and foremost, I want to wish all our mothers, especially my mother, who from time to time tends to watch these meetings, and I communicate to her that's probably not a good thing for blood pressure. But I do want to wish all the mothers, especially those that work for the city and serve the city and in our community, happy Mother's Day, and hopefully you are showered with gifts and niceties on Mother's Day. We do have an event that's taking place as it relates to neighborhood services, a partnership with the city and CRA here at the Marina Events Center on Monday. And so if you're looking for information as to how to participate and how to register, please visit the CRA's website, and you'll see information about our neighborhood services program and the things that we have going on. So the program will be starting here at 6 p.m. to 7:30 on Monday, May 17th, and wishing everybody a happy and safe Mother's Day weekend. That concludes my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. City Attorney?
No comments, Madam Chair.
We'll start with the mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just the sentiments of Mr. Evans would like to wish all of the mothers happy Mother's Day. Be safe.
Thank you. Councilman Project McCoy?
So I just want to respond. Councilman Lawson, you know, I was in service at Nissan a couple weeks ago, and I did notice that change, but I don't know if the changing of a name constitutes actual advertisement. So you can name your business anything you want, but I did notice that. But you know what I did? I walked up to make sure that BTR was current, and it wasn't. So I'm glad you brought that up. So what are we doing with, you know, these businesses that don't have it? We had somebody at one point that used to go out to businesses to ensure compliance with the BTRs, because I'm gonna tell you what they do at Palm Beach County. They will file a action on you in circuit court and get a judgment. So if they're doing business in the city, they have to pay. I mean, we can't sit here and, you know, talk about all of these different fees, and we got folks that are in the city that aren't paying their dues. And I certainly want to make sure that we, you know, we capture that on the enforcement side. Mr. Evans.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Evans?
We will provide a response to that and what we're doing to the board in writing by tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Son on Blue Heron.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Lawson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Evans, the allocation of those federal dollars related to the pandemic, I know that those are coming down, and a majority of them are going to be going towards our water plant. And I want us to also expeditiously work on a plan to get some of those dollars into the residents' hands. It's going to be about $14 million. So if we can take some of those funds, majority going towards the water plant, because water is a priority that our residents have been screaming, but also there's a lot of residents that have been directly impacted by COVID and that are still feeling the effects. So if we can take a certain portion of that to address some of those residents' concerns, and we can have discussion as a DIAS in reference to whether it's going to be property, water bills, expenditures that can kind of help get them out of the
Anything other than.
Dr. Botel.
Dr.
We can hear
Botel.
you.
that can
I'm sorry.
That can kind of leverage and push us, you know, past this pandemic to assist them. So even if it's a portion, I want to put some of that and get those into their hands as quickly as possible. One of the biggest hurdles that the county ran into is they received a bulk amount of money, but it took a while to actually disseminate the funds because nobody was ready for this. Nobody was prepared to get this bulk of money and then how to disseminate it to their residents. So I want to make sure that once these funds come in, we have a plan of how to expeditiously get it to those residents.
Absolutely, Madam Chair, and we're queued up and ready to bring the item to the board for discussion on the $14.9 million that we anticipate receiving, and more specifically the $7 million that we can anticipate here in the next couple of weeks, and then also the stipulations that come along with that and what we can utilize those monies for, and get direction from the board as to how to program that.
Thank you, sir. Comments by Dr. Botel?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I just had two more comments.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No worries, thank you. The Expungement Community Fair that was held in our community, that was a huge success. We had about 13 individuals that came and had expungements done that are going to now have fresh starts in the community and that got their records expunged. The Mental Health Community Forum that we hosted here in the Marina, if you haven't had that opportunity, it's airing on Channel 18. That was an amazing forum with an amazing panel. And then the National Poetry, and myself and a few colleagues were there as well. And that was a nice event that I would like for us to discuss as a city moving forward to implement that, because the residents, our seniors, everyone really enjoyed that event. It was a little hot out there, but it was a beautiful event. So we can discuss with them possibly making it a little later in the afternoon to get some of that sundown. But otherwise, council, thank you so much. My colleagues, happy Mother's Day to all of you and all my residents as well.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Patel?
Of course, now I forget to turn my mic on. Sorry. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Evans, for mentioning blood pressure. That's the reason I'm not there this evening. Mine was way out of control today, and I apologize for my absence. But mentioning Mother's Day again, if any of you out there are interested in providing your mother with something other than flowers, you could provide her with an opportunity to grow her own by participating in the Sing Around Community Garden. The raised beds should be arriving over the weekend, and if you give mothers an opportunity to rent a bed, they can begin to, grow their own flowers. So the only other thing I have is that my quarterly Singer Island Town Hall meeting will be on the 20th at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Miller Anderson.
I just wanted to say that May is Lupus Awareness Month. I didn't ask for a proclamation to be done this month. We've done one before a few years back, but I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention that World Lupus Day is May 10th, and Put on Purple Day is May 21st. And most of you may or may not know that I do have lupus, and so this is very dear to my heart, to make sure that people are aware of the effects of it. And like I said before, we've done proclamations before, so I didn't bring it before us this time. But please look up, learn a little bit about it, because there are a lot of people that are in our community that do have it or may have symptoms of it, but it's a very difficult disease in order to identify that's exactly what you have. So please make sure that you observe this time during the month of May. And happy Mother's Day to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My comments are, tomorrow we are having our traffic calming for Federal Garden and 13th Street. It's going to be actually on 13th Street between avenues T and R. It's going to be in front of a couple of houses, and what we want to do is have the residents of that neighborhood to come out and have some conversation and give us some direction on some of the options that we have for traffic calming for 13th Street. Also wanted to say that we had an excellent turnout for our groundbreaking for our urban farm a couple of Saturdays ago, and we're looking forward to that project coming to fruition and for the residents to be able to engage in some of the activities that will be held at that site. And that, folks, is adjournment.